Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April Community Standing Committee meeting. Committee members and also to staff and media. We're all appropriately social distanced, which is good to see. And we don't have any requests for leave of absence, I believe, today, or any apologies. So we'll move straight into the recognition of traditional owners. Over to you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders, both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Duff. Councillors, you've had the agenda now for some time. Is there any items on there that you feel you may have a conflict of interest on? Please disclose them now. Thank you. Okay, if no one else has got some, I've got one at 9.8 in terms of the short-term use of 195 Kingura Street, commonly known in Kingura as the old Trendsetter building. I have a business that aligns where the access point through the laneway aligns with that business, and as such, I'll be disclosing a declarable conflict of interest and voluntarily leaving the meeting and staying away until that matter's resolved. That's 9.8, if that could be noted. Thank you. That would be much appreciated, Linnell. Okay, moving on, a confirmation of the minutes of the previous committee meeting held on the 10th of March at 5.1. Do we have a mover that the minutes be received? Thanks, Councillor Henshin. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Potter. Okay, any questions, concerns in relation to the contents of the minutes? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.1 is the outstanding reports at 20, and you can see that there, councillors. I'll just get to that. I trust you've had a chance to have a look through that report. And I'll move that be noted for information. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors, any questions for our CEO in relation to the sorry, am I on the right page? The outstanding reports. 6.1. Comfortable with that? Okay, those in favour, be noted. Thank you. Okay, now my pleasure to hand over to Councillor Potter for the Community Arts, Heritage, Sport and Recreation Portfolio Report for April. Thanks very much, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's with great pleasure. The Community Grant Program Assessment Panel assessed round 2 of the Community Grant Program in late March. Council received 43 applications requesting a total of $99,214.71. The assessment panel would like to announce the following successful applicants. The Community Hall Insurance Grant, $1,000 each to Geelong Community Hall, Queensland Dairy and Heritage Museum, Cumbria and District Memorial School of the Arts. The Community Event Sponsorship, South Burnett Endurance Riders for $2,500, Mergen Junior Rugby League for the Domestic Violence Round for $3,000, South Burnett Mountain Bike Club for the State Titles $2,000, Relay for Life Organising Committee $2,000, Bloom and Beautiful Blackbud for their Bloom and Beautiful Festival for $3,000, South Burnett Reserve Forces Day for $750. For Healthy Community Sponsorship, the South Burnett Western Performance Club Come and Try Open Days $600. The one-off program, the project program one-off sponsorship, the National Council of Women, the South Burnett Regional Council bursary for $1,000. I've lost my pages here now, here we go. Lions Club of Nanango, supply hospital beds through Community Health, $3,000. Agricultural Shows of the South Burnett, the 2021 sub-chambers, $1,600. Mergen Men's Shed, $1,200. South Burnett Pantry, $650. Warrul and Hall Committee, $3,000. Eva's Place, $2,629. The Bunny Mountains Community Association, $3,000. Preston, Queensland for the Preston Park Run, $3,000. The Monjour District Rural Fire Brigade, $2,000. Kingura and District Vintage Machinery Club Incorporated, 3,000. Preston Scout Group, 2,200. Tobinga State School P&C, 693. St John's Lutheran Kindy, 2,500. The Wandai Country Club Security Camera System, 3,000. Nanango Men's Shed, 2,865. Baramba Beekeepers, 1,000. School Awards Sponsorship, St Mary's Catholic College for $300. And with the Regional Arts Development Fund, there were 4 applicants. So Kirsty is doing the silversmithing workshop for $2,560. Robin is doing the Top of the Arts Regional Arts Forum at the Bunyas for $340. And it's great that we're able to do that now with the RADA funding. The Kingura Regional Art Gallery Celebrating the Art of Craft 2021, $1,950. Nanango Theatre Company for the Stand-Up Comedy Workshop for $3,000. The next round of funding will open on the 1st of August 2021. The libraries, the reintroduction of the library programming. Beginning mid-April, regular First Five Forever rhyme time and story time programs will be reintroduced at each South Burnett Libraries branch. Bookings for these sessions will be essential, with attendance limited due to COVID restrictions. The introduction of other library programs, including card groups, book clubs and crochet groups, will also take place, COVID permitting. The Larrikin Puppet Show. South Burnett Libraries are excited to announce that an extra special story time will take place at the Kingura Town Hall on Wednesday the 19th of May from 10:30am as the Larrikin Puppet Show takes to the stage. The puppet show will be colourful, interactive and crowd-pleasing, with puppetry style like The Muppets and Sesame Street, funded by the State Library of Queensland First Five Forever initiative. So children under 5 and their families are encouraged to come along, sing, dance and play. Bookings for the Larrikin Puppet Show are essential and those in attendance will be required to adhere to COVID-safe requirements. And I do believe that also falls on National Simultaneous Story Time. Refurbishment of the Kingura Library Children's Area. The refurbishment of the Kingura Library's junior area is complete, with young community members taking full advantage of the bright and inviting space and features, forward-facing display shelving and interactive toys. The wall-mounted crocodile, purchased with First Five Forever funding, has been a massive hit with the youngest visitors as they play the magnetic marble maze in his tummy and move the beads to his tail. The new interactive signage that incorporates cheerful cartoon characters assists children as they explore the collection to discover their favourite books and authors. The First Five Ever Grant Project. Funds received via the First Five Ever Project grant will be expended this month with the purchase of 2 marquees and a colourful outreach setup that includes tablecloths and promotional flags. It is hoped that this bright and vibrant outreach display will be used at events including Under 8's Day and the Kingura Christmas Carnival. COVID food safety training at the Preston Library. On Wednesday the 10th of March, library staff hosted a training session at the Preston Library for members of the Preston Show Society. Participants were supported as they completed an online TAFE training module for the COVID safe food handling. Funds from the Tech Savvy Seniors Queensland grant made this possible. Those in attendance were very pleased that Council had been able to assist with the online training. Library membership cards. The South Burnett Library's patrons will soon be introduced to new library membership cards design, which will include a key tag for easy use and access. The new cards will come with a barcode pre-printed, which means that new members in Blackbutt, Mergen, Preston and Wandai will no longer need to wait to have their cards printed from the Kingaroy or Nanango libraries. Arts. Council has submitted their bids to the 2021-22 Regional Arts Development Program. Council has submitted a proposal expenditure of $32,764. If successful, the breakdown will be as follows. 2 by funding rounds with a total of $21,476 available for the community to access in the way of grant funding, and $11,288 to continue our partnership with neighbouring councils and Southern Queensland University. This funding will be used to work together over an 8-month period, with the aim of this collaboration will be to develop a touring circuit across the local government areas of Bundaberg, Fraser Coast, North Burnett and South Burnett. Sport and recreation. Kingura Junior Cricket have applied for funding in conjunction with Queensland Cricket for infrastructure upgrades to the training nets at the River Road fields. This will allow the club and Queensland Cricket to host some large-scale Tier 4 development programs on weekends and holiday periods. The cricket season has wrapped up for another year in the South Burnett for both junior and senior competitions. Mergen Crusaders finished the season off by taking it at the Triple Crown in Gympie A-grade competition down in Gympie Colts. Nanango Scorpions took out South Burnett B-grade final by 22 runs against the more fancied Mergen Diggers to complete the season. It's great to see the Kingura Saints men's and women's teams are once again competing in the Darling Downs season, with pre-season games being held at Fernvale late March prior to round ones commencing on April 24th, and we wish them all the best for the season. Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that my portfolio report be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors, questions in relation to the comments in relation to the report? Councillor Potter just wanted to acknowledge the community grants program, which has always been an important part of what council has contributed to the community. I know previously to my time in council, being involved in charities and community groups, it's very much critical to the ongoing operations of many of those groups. $99,000 worth of applications across 43 organisations, and out of that $99,000, $60,000 was allocated from my calculations across 32 organisations. So to everyone involved, the staff and the council committee, congratulations on a great job. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a question for Councillor Potter, just in relation to the arts report. It's great to hear that we've put forward our bid for this year's funding. I was just wondering, in relation to our partnership with our neighbouring councils and CQ University, I was just curious, is it possible to get more information about some of the outcomes of that funding to date here in the South Burnett? Because I'm mindful of the area that funding covers. So just, yeah, a bit of an update in terms of where CQ RASN's at in working with the South Burnett in the arts area would be great.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. With regards to the last lot of funding, it actually only covered the 3 council areas, which was South Burnett, Fraser Coast and Bundaberg. And at the moment, I believe next week there is the first funding workshop with regards to that money, which is actually going to help the artists. So the artists involved, it'll actually help them have their art as a business, so they know how to go online and do all those different things. So that's the first one we've had in the area, I think, with regards to that funding, and Trudy Ligo will be running that workshop. So we have, and I'm sorry, I'm half looking over to David Martindale here because he's part of South Bend Arts. So, but I think with regards, we can certainly bring back reports from any of those workshops to the next council meeting to see how they're running with the community, and we can get communities, the artists' input with regards to that.
Councillor Potter, if I may, we'd be only too happy to bring back an information report and then, yeah, flesh it out a bit if that suits.
Yeah, certainly. I think I'd really welcome that, because I know this council's had a real focus on arts, and I know there are great outcomes being had, and it would just be excellent to have a little bit more exposure, particularly as we go into the budget and start to make decisions about how we gear up to support our arts community into the future. So I would appreciate that, CEO Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, councillors. Councillor Potter, the Larrikin Puppet Show looks like it's going to be really exciting for the under 5s and probably for some of the adults as well. I know it's on Wednesday, the 19th of May. Of course, we'll have, I would expect, a committee meeting on that day. I'm just wondering whether we can break for morning tea from 10:30 to 11. Perhaps councillors can pop over and visit and say hello. I'd love to see a little bit of the puppet show if that's possible. Is that something you could help facilitate, Councillor Potter, through the...
Yes, Mr Mayor, more than happy to, along with General Manager O'May.
That would be great. Thank you very much. And perhaps if we can make sure, Mr CEO, if we can get some media out around the community grants program round and the just the large number of organisations right across our region who are going to benefit from that contribution from council and the ratepayers of the South Burnett. Okay, well, if everyone's comfortable with that, we'll put it to the vote that be received. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. Okay, let's move on to 7.2 now. Sorry, 7.1, the Rural Services, Natural Resource Management, Planning and Compliance. It's a lot to say. Portfolio report at page 30. Now, my pleasure to introduce Councillor Henson to deliver that. Thank you, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, again, the months don't slow down, do they? Here we are back again with a portfolio report on rural services, natural resource management, planning, compliance and services. In weed control, NRM staff and contractors joined forces with Cherbourg Aboriginal Shire Council and Baramba Creek landholders to commence a surveillance and treatment program for honey locust and parthenium. A total of 2 hectares of weed control was completed in March. Treatment of giant rat's tail grass throughout the region continued. Groundsel was targeted at Warrul and wetlands and a greater grass at Cushney and Baiee. Splatter guns were loaned by landholders at Haley Creek to assist with groundsel, and spray trailers were borrowed by landholders at Bowie and Tabinga for treatment of restricted weeds. In fire management, fire trail maintenance commenced this month with 13 out of 19 reserves completed. Fire trails have been completed at Bowie Reserve, Gordonbrook Dam, the Nango Fauna Sanctuary, Old Esk Road Gravel Reserve, Bandooba Dam, Preston Reserves, Malar Reserve, Kingura Night Soil Depot, Staines Road, Wandai Airport, Wandai West, Kingura Heights and Blackbutt Tip. Brigades will commence prescribed burns on scheduled reserves between the 19th of April and the 31st of August as dependent upon weather conditions and resources. And driving around the burn and the divisions, having seen those burns, and with the latest rain we've had, they've come away and will be very well managed throughout the winter season. Environmental assets, NRM staff completed 2 environmental assessments for vegetation removal associated with road construction, and 2 roadside burning and fence line clearing applications were approved. Stock root grazing permits, no stock root grazing applications were received and processed in March. And in sale yard staff conducted 870 cattle tick inspections, dipped 1,189 head. A total of 93 head were sold through the Coolangatta sale yards in March. Wild dog and feral pig control, 4 cat traps were hired out to landholders in the Wandai, Nanango and Belogie areas, and pig and wild dog traps were used by landholders in the Cumbia and Belogie areas. Minor bird traps were set in Greenview, and infrared motion trigger cameras were used by landholders in Belogie to monitor feral animal movements. And I might just add, those infrared motion trigger cameras today have come a long way in the last 5 or 6 years. They're fantastic things. Rabbit control, biological control was distributed on 2 properties in Coolangatta and Nanango. Wandering livestock, council received 10 requests to attend to wandering livestock across the region, and 1 bull was impounded. Now, Planning Department, Planning Scheme Amendment. Council's planning team have commenced with the drafting of a suite of amendments to the planning scheme document and maps. This amendment package will be discussed with the state government planning team in Bundaberg to confirm how best to incorporate the state's planning policy into council's proposed amendment. The proposed amendment also includes requests received to date from landowners to amend the zoning of land. It is anticipated that the draft amendment package will be completed by the end of May 2021, and the first state review of the draft amendment package completed by the end of August 21. I note that the general public will have a future opportunity to make formal submissions to council regarding the proposed amendment during the formal consultation that is proposed to undertaking during September 2021. An adoption of the final amendment can be considered after receipt of approval from the Planning Minister, which is likely to be available by the end of 2021 or early 2022. A review of the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan. To assist in the review of the Wide Bay Regional Plan, which is the WBB Regional Plan, a draft issues and opportunities discussion paper was released to key stakeholder working groups on the 18th of December 2020. The discussion paper covered 16 key themes surrounding issues and opportunities within the Wide Bay Burnett region that may benefit from a land use planning approach. Stakeholders in all working groups were sent the discussion paper for feedback. All the feedback received has been reviewed by the state, regional and spatial planning team and will be used to assist in forming regional directions and goals when drafting the regional plan. A summary of feedback received from the local government working group is provided below. Interregional opportunities, leveraging off surrounding regions' proximity, limited access to health, social services and declining populations in the regional rural communities is significant and contrasts with the issues felt in urban centres in the region, as such will require different solutions. Extractive construction materials are an opportunity alongside the mineral resources, and competitive advantages of the region need to be identified and highlighted in the regional plan. Land fragmentation from rural residential development is of concerns across the region. The three key enablers for the region: 1, transport infrastructure connections will create economic opportunities and is vital to growth. And 2, sustainable water use is integral to regional growth as it is directly linked to agricultural growth. And 3, development of the Port of Bundaberg can bring opportunities to the region. Emerging industries in agribusiness such as crop diversification, renewable energy and tourism opportunities need to be highlighted and supported. The local government working group met on the 11th of March 2021. This meeting identified key aspiration for the region that will be used to shape the development of the regional plan and its economic strategy, ensuring the outcomes advanced and supported by the plan marries with the aspirations of the Wide Bay Burnett region. In building and plumbing resources, Council commenced with the recruitment process to appoint an additional licensed building certifier and plumbing inspector. The application closing date was the 1st of April 2021 and the selection process is likely to be completed by the end of April 2021 or mid-May 2021. In the interim, a part-time administration officer was seconded from Customer Service Section to support Council's building certifier until the appointment of a full-time replacement for the administration officer that was supporting Council's building certifier. Council's business support officer further supports the plumbing administrative position by providing training to the administration officer that commenced full-time employment at the end of February 2021 and providing administrative support to the plumbing and building sections. Environmental health, COVID-19. With COVID-19 restrictions increased in the Greater Brisbane area and also throughout all of Queensland, this has seen additional and increased inquiries to Council. Council's environmental health staff have continued to field and assist with inquiries where able. Inquiries are also being referred directly to Queensland Health, who is the primary agency in this matter. And compliance, the new permanent compliance officer to replace the compliance officer who is retiring has started and undergoing induction and onboarding processes. It may take some time before the replacement officer is functioning at the same level as the existing staff member, so please bear with the compliance team during this time of transition. The temporary dog registration compliance officer position should also be operational shortly. The compliance team has been reduced by 1 FTE compliance officer for several months due to extenuating circumstances. This is recognised that this has had a detrimental effect upon service levels. With that, could I just bore Council and the public with some stats and figures just quickly? With the weed management, honey locust and African boxthorn, to date and expected to be by the end of December, Council would have engaged contractors to survey, map and treat honey locust on the Baramba Creek, Stewart River in partnership with Cherbourg. And the African boxthorn is the same around the Wandai and Ironpot areas, with a field day being held there. A total of $57,500 is expected to be spent in that area, in those control of those weeds. Establishment of feral animal groups, this has been extremely successful. In the past several months there was grant funding available there between the Ironpot and the Wengenville districts, and they're up and running and have had extreme success in controlling and catching and eradicating of wild dogs. In the cattle stats for the year to date, 1st to the 7th to the 31st of March, 6,211 head of cattle were sold through the Coolabunny sale yards. Might only have been 93 for this past quarter, or past month, sorry. But that goes to show 6,211 head. The cattle industry in the agricultural sector is extremely strong. And at the prices at the moment, it isn't any wonder that 6,000 head of cattle being sold through there. Quickly moving on, just some more figures with wild dogs. Total of 339 kilometres have dog baits and pig baits been spread out over 19, almost 20,000 hectares. There's 3 kilograms of rabbits, of carrots has been put out with biological control for the control of rabbits. And can I also make note to the public that Council has available equipment to be loaned in spray trailers, splatter guns, portable steel yards, cameras, GPS, dog traps, pig traps, cat traps and tree spears. So with that, I'd like to move that my Rural Services, Natural Resource Management, Planning and Compliance portfolio report be accepted. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Duff. Councillors, questions, comments? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to flag that I was at Banduma Homestead at a meeting yesterday and they said that they're having a rabbit issue. So just wanted to, I have actually sent that through, but just wanted to, and they were asking what they were meant to do to control rabbits. And I guess for my benefit and just the benefit of just the public, what is the action if you do have rabbits? Do you have to actually try and get a trap from council and then trap a rabbit and then get it injected, or will council come out and like they have with carrots and like could someone just enlighten me? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Just if I could just comment on that. Yes, that's correct. There are rabbit traps available, and of course the biological control is the carrots get injected and fed to the rabbits. And there is an increase in rabbits across the Burnett actually, and Banduma Homestead's only one place where they're actually quite relevant at the moment, but across the Burnett. And I'd encourage people to get in touch with council to either get those traps, and that's across the board. Well, I just mentioned with things that are available to be loaned out to the general public, and especially in the agricultural sectors. But rabbits are becoming a problem. They can be easily controlled, though, if people want to be diligent and come to council and get that, or get council to implement the plan with the carrots or the traps. Banduma Homestead, just quickly on Banduma Homestead, I'll give Banduma Homestead a quick plug. Spirit of the Bush is coming up there, so I encourage everybody to go on out to Banduma Homestead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question. I did see it come out in the media earlier this week that the invasive African olive has been found in the Toowoomba area, and I just wondered if there's any update in terms of is there any risk to the South Burnett? Is there any information that anybody has in relation to that?
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, I've heard and seen of it over in the Downs area. To my knowledge, it's not relevant in the South Burnett, but in saying that, we're certainly keeping an eye on it, along with several other things. There's one that's come to mind is the tiger pear out in the Banduma area, which nobody knows much about. It seems to be, I won't say restricted to, but it's in the waterways, and that, of course, is where we get enormous spread, along with varmint. Varmint can spread a lot of these weeds and things as well, and that's why it works hand in hand with the control of varmint throughout our region, as well as the weeds, and the ones that you've mentioned there we'll be keeping a close eye on.
So just in terms of that, do our staff have a relationship with the department? Is that how we're keeping a close eye on it? Are there conversations being had about some of these issues? Or?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, our staff do work closely with both Gympie, Toowoomba, Cherbourg Regional Council, and so NRM staff are often, I'm not sure how regularly, but they might have a quarterly catch up. Anything with when we're developing our pest management plan, and same vice versa, the councils always have copies and they liaise on those. So if there is an issue in the adjoining neighbouring shires, we do sort of on an operational level just do contact. probably more closely with Sherbrooke, as we've talked about previously, with Parthenium and Honey Locust and that, which are right in our headwaters with and that. But something like that, we would be liaising with Toomba, and we can certainly follow up with the team and just make sure they have touched base lately.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think that'd be important just to make sure. Also, just wanted to give a thank you to CEO Mark and GMO May. I know our subcommittee, just a heads up, there'll be more information come about the regional development strategy at our next committee meeting. However, the information provided in your report, Councillor Henshin, is excellent, and I just wanted to make Councillor aware that, you know, that the documents and the review that's been undertaken of the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan really has informed Council's review of our regional development strategy. And I know both the Mayor and Councillor Henshin have been invited to the subcommittee meetings, and sometimes there's been crossover in meeting availability, but looking forward to bringing that back to Council. I think the work that's been done from our Council and the information that was available through that opportunities paper that was released, discussion paper, draft issues and opportunities discussion paper, really has been timely, being that we're having that discussion about our regional development strategy. So just a heads up that that is coming back to Council and work is being done on that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on the the amendments to the planning scheme, I've had a few different potential developers send through some submissions. Just wondering how that's being handled. Are they being, those people being met with and then the submission being included in the actual, what we're sending to the state government, or are we going to see it back at the council table before it goes to the state government? Like, who's making the decision on whether those submissions are accepted or declined?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so if people are sending in things now, the team will look at those and probably depending on what it is, whether it's more of an administrative issue that has been overlooked or it makes common sense, then that would be incorporated into the amendments. If it's a strategic change, then that will come back. We'll have to come back through council. So the amendment package will come back through council. So yeah, if it was something that but we've had a couple where there might be just map changes or that we've been picking up. So if there are things like that people have picked up that just need amendment, we'd include those in. But at this stage, this is all just draft amendments to come back. So everything will need to come back through council for endorsement. It'll have to go through the department as through the process too. So yeah, it's hard to pick a particular process because it depends on the particular one. Like where I think you had a query about a flood mapping process. So something like that, we would probably just provide information back on the background of that to the people who are looking at inquiring on that. So it won't be a matter of that if someone puts in a request, then we'll just accede to that request and include that in. It will have to be looked at on planning grounds on what the basis of it is. But yeah, any of that strategic decision making will need to come back to council.
General Manager, if I could just ask you to perhaps take note. In the report it says that the formal consultation process will happen during September 21. Perhaps if at some stage between now and September, perhaps early in the new financial year, if we could have a report brought back to this committee in relation to the process by which that formal consultation will happen in September. Perhaps we could have a report come to council 2 or 3 months prior to that so that we can consider that and make sure that council is comfortable with that process. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Manager, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to confirm that we do plan to bring a strategy to council, a consultation strategy, and I think when we first presented it, there was a few dot points mentioned in terms of how this will be undertaken, but as part of we would also need to submit that strategy, to the state government for approval. So yeah, we will come back with a strategy that will outline exactly how the formal consultation will be undertaken. So at the moment, it's more informal consultation and it's just trying to get all the ideas together, but the formal consultation will be based on an approved strategy. And all the submissions that are made, council will be the authority to make a decision on whether the submissions are accepted or not.
Thanks very much, Manager. You might like to stay there because you'll have an item coming up very soon. Okay, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We seem to be, I know we're working in the field of pest eradication and things like that, and, you know, with the grasses and everything, but I've had a few people come to me lately with regards to armyworm, and a few of the corn growers around here that have said lately that they will not be growing anymore. That's it for them. They can't afford it. And this is having a detrimental effect on quite a few people's mental health. And I'm just wondering whether we're working with the DPI or what are we doing in that space, if anything. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. We actually have coming up at the research station in a couple of weeks' time a very, very interesting field day, and I have circulated to everybody. I recommend that we all attend that. Under the conditions we've gone through, the armyworms have been a huge problem within the corn growing and the peanut industry, along with the mice. We've all been very aware of there's been an enormous mouse plague, not just in the South Burnett, but across the entire, from the north and central highlands right through to the bottom of New South Wales, and it's probably unprecedented. I mean, we've seen mouse plagues before, but not over that such a big area. Landowners have taken it upon themselves, and I can speak from experience myself. My management bill for the control of armyworms and mice in the last month has been exorbitant, and the corn growers, there's many of them have aerial flown bait on to their crops to try and eradicate. There's a little assistance in that because it's owner's responsibility, unfortunately, but these are things that are controlled often by weather conditions and climate. Armyworms, I'm not sure with everybody, if I can just allude a little bit into armyworms, they'll go along and they can destroy a crop from any stage, from when it's planted in the ground to when it's coming out of the ground. They'll either chew the leaves off a small plant, or they'll chew the root structure off a plant, and once they do that, the plant is completely destroyed. And the corn side of things, people would have noticed also, and this came up this time last year, and it's seasonal and it's climate conditions, but as everyone noticed at the moment, there's an enormous increase in the corellas again. Remember last year when this came to the table in chambers about the corellas in and around Kingura? They're back again, they're here, and they're here by the thousands, tens of thousands. So it's seasonal. There's a limit to what you can do with them, of course, and baiting, because it can become an issue depending on what you can use or are allowed to use, and of course it's a big expense. But yeah, it is a very concerning thing, and as we're well aware with mental health and in the rural sector, I know personally people that have struggled with armyworms this season, and it's been pretty ordinary, I can tell you. And like I say, there's a limit, but they have flown. Many people have flown, aerial flown bait on, and that's an enormous cost on top of what they've already got to endure. So it's a tough one, yeah, but it's often just climate conditions.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that to our attention too, Councillor Potter. Yeah, Councillor Henson. Armyworms, hey, infecting our maize crops. Another challenge for the farmers. Just on the report, just had a couple of things myself. First of all, the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan. We did have our first meeting of mayors and CEOs, along with representatives from the department, the Deputy Premier, who's also the Minister for Local Government and State Development. That was held in Hervey Bay a few weeks ago. We put forward some issues from our region's perspective in relation to Wide Bay Burnett, broader regional priorities and opportunities, just to give it a bit of an update on that. So first of all, broader Wide Bay opportunities around upcoming interstate tourism opportunities, as well as international tourism opportunities, starting to get on the front foot and make sure that we've laid down the groundwork to prepare for that when the international borders open, whenever that may be, highlighting that there's a triangle of significant tourism assets located within the Wide Bay. If we look at the Bunya Mountains to the west, we go across to the north east, where we've got the Great Barrier Reef, the Southern Great Barrier Reef at Bundaberg. So we go from Cumbia to Bundaberg, and we draw a line down to Fraser Island and then back to Cumbia. If you draw a triangle there, it's a pretty impressive list, isn't it? Bunya Mountains, Great Barrier Reef and Fraser Island in terms of interstate and international tourists. We're keen to see that the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan focuses on how we can develop, promote and market that for the benefit of our region, as well as, of course, the wider Wide Bay. In terms of, as it's highlighted here, strategic agricultural land, making sure that the planning schemes are able to as far as possible, quarantine strategic agricultural land. We know that we've got some really highly fertile soil that can sometimes be taken up by rural residential development. And then, of course, there's making sure that we've got the transport infrastructure in place to support opportunities for us in food processing. We are close enough to the Port of Brisbane, the Brisbane Airport, and also the Wellcamp Airport, but we need to improve the roads so that the trucks can get there cost effectively. And of course, the other big one we never miss is water, is an issue right across the region, no less so in the South Burnett, where we have significant issues around urban water supply, which is limiting Kingaroy's industrial growth, and also, of course, agricultural access to agricultural water. So that's just a bit of an update on the issues we covered there. Thank you, Mr. CEO, and your staff for progressing the recruitment of an additional licensed building certifier and plumbing inspector. I know we raised that at the previous meeting and you've jumped on that very quickly and dealt with that. It's great to see you've fast-tracked that in response to the upturn in the construction industry. And there's also the compliance work that goes alongside that as well. We do know that there's a lot happening across the region, and also the replacement, the full-time replacement of the admin officer. I can see you progressing that as well to support the plumbing and building certification, because our staff are on off their feet, and we know that that can sometimes cause frustration to the construction industry. But council, for the community's benefit, council is certainly moving quickly to put additional resources in place to service that construction industry. Councillors, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we go to the vote? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really think that you hit the nail on the head with regards to the transport and those routes, and trying to identify where the pinch points are and where we could make a difference. And I just wonder how we're progressing that. Like, I know that in the past we've had transport operators and businesses with skin in the game to the table. Council had committees where we talked to those people to identify where we could, perhaps try and upgrade a road to B double, or road train access. Just wondering where we're at with that as far as engaging with the people that are the key stakeholders. Yeah, thanks,
Councillor Duff. This will come out of our corporate plan. This is identified in our draft corporate plan. Once that's adopted on the 28th of April, if it's adopted, then key freight routes and industry consultation in relation to the identification and future advocacy around such is one of the strategic priorities identified in the draft plan. Once that's adopted and resolved by council, then the body of work associated with putting together the plans and advocating, presenting that to departmental staff and government will then commence. It will also, of course, align with the work that Councillor Shoemaker is doing in the regional development strategy in support of the corporate plan. So that work will happen through the RDS, through the corporate plan, and of course we'll make sure that we're working not with just industry, but also Department of State Development and also Minister Miles and also Minister Bailey in that regard, as well as keeping our local federal members very much informed as to what the needs of the region will be. You're comfortable with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Okay, councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks very much, Councillor Henshin. 7.2 is the Natural Resource Management Operational Update at 34. Committee, I think Councillor Henshin's already given a pretty good understanding of those statistics. So, Councillor Henshin, are you happy to move that be received for information?
Oh, Mr Mayor, but just before I do, could I also just bring quickly to the attention in our, just for interest's sake, for our certificates of planning, there's some interesting figures there to date, and I'll just quickly run through. Planning certificates to date.
Oh, that's the next report. We'll come to that shortly, Councillor Henson.
Sorry, I'm
We
jumping,
just
but
need
yeah.
you to move this, Councillor, so we can get going.
Thank you, yeah.
Thanks very much, Hook. Okay, we have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillors, any questions on the operational update on NRM? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. And thank again, Councillor Henson, for giving us a very good understanding of the work that's happening across the region on that. We'll get you the opportunity now. 7.3, Planning and Land Management Operational Update at 38. Councillor Henson, would you like to move that be received?
Yes.
Thank you,
Mr.
and
Mayor.
feel free to speak to that shortly. We have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker over there. Councillor Hench, would you like to open up some of the commentary on this? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. There's some interesting and great work again by our team behind the scenes on putting these figures together. There's some very interesting statistics there. If we look at the planning certificates and the numbers that is there to date, comparative to last year, we have 28 planning certificates already to date. There was 42 to date last year. If we go to plumbing certificates, 2021, there's 116 compared to last year, 94. Planning customer requests, and I note this because of the work that our staff does on the counter and behind the scenes and the people that get spoken to. There's 678, I believe, without my glasses on, 678 planning customer requests compared to 458 last year. That is an incredible, that's over 220, or it is 220, quick arithmetic, requests there. So spare a thought for our guys and girls behind the counter and our management team that deals with all of this. They are some very interesting figures, and I say that because there's obviously things happening in the Burnett. So that's on a very, very positive note. So it's there for everybody to see. There's some very, very good figures, facts and figures there in that comparisons of all our certificates and customer requests and incentives and whatnot throughout that. So yeah, I'd just like to bring that to the council chambers and the public's attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Henson. It's interesting, isn't it? I'm just having a look at that here myself as well. So if we look at, we just talked about the fact that council is gearing up the resourcing. We're ramping up our resourcing in plumbing and building certifiers with extra staff there, extra admin support. Council's budgeting for that to support the construction industry. And we can see why. If we look at building certifications for the media and the community, so last financial year, 375 for the whole year, building certifications were issued. Already after 9 months, we've done 480. If you extrapolate that out at that rate of work, that'll extrapolate out to 640 for the year, 640 compared to 375 last financial year. That's building certificates for new buildings constructed, I'd imagine. That is a 70% increase in workload, a 70% increase in the construction industry activity, if building certificates are any indication. Plumbing certificates we can see there as well. I think that says 116 year to date after 9 months, and I think that says my eyesight's failing me. I'm 55 now. 34, is that right? 94, sorry. So already, if you extrapolate that out, that's probably another 50% at least increase in plumbing certificates, General Manager. It shows why we need extra staff, and it shows a good indicator, as Councillor Henson said, that the construction industry is really moving along at the moment. Thanks, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. I just wanted to clarify, so the new building applications and plumbing applications are over the page, so the certificates are like the searches, so a building certificate might be if someone's, but these are demonstrating people doing searches and building property changes. So the actual, you go over the next page, Nell. So that one.
Yes, so I'm looking at the certificates.
So
over the page is the applications.
So these are the applications.
Right,
so
thank you.
Building applications, you see we've got 362 year to date and 364 last year, and same with with plumbing, we're basically at 3/4 of the way here. We've reached the same number of applications for last year. The private certification, they're privately certified. So yeah, they're more privately certified than previous. But where our building and the teams are finding, we've got a construction boom. Like there's certainly industry in there, but we're also seeing a lot of houses changing hands. So they're doing a lot of work as far as searches, people doing searches for the building records on existing houses. So there is a double up. The team are coupling. Sometimes you have one without the other, but at this time we've got changes, existing houses changing and new applications.
Thanks very much, General Manager, for clarifying that. But Manager, what are you seeing in the department in terms of the construction industry and the demand that's happening at the moment? Can you give us your views on that?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I do agree with what General Manager May is saying. And speaking to our certifier last week, he reckons it's the worst he's seen it in years. So in other words, in terms of we have a bit of a building boom due to the federal government stimulus, but there's also a property boom going on at the moment. So the planning certificates, building certificates is an indication of how many people are actually, properties that are changing hands. And I think speaking to the team yesterday, there's still about another 70 certificates in the system that they are constantly working on. So we've even employed some of our planning team to assist the building section to work through those search certificates. And the thing with the certificate, of course, is it brings up issues that buildings may not have been certified, all these issues, and then they want the certifier to do additional inspections and to go and do certification. So there's a significant amount of spin-off work that comes just out of a certificate. And the same with plumbing applications. They constantly just rolling in, 2 or 3 a month, which is quite good. So to me, it's a good indication that in terms of the built environment and the property industry, we're certainly in a bit of a, I wouldn't say that the same unrealistic booms we had before the global financial crisis, but it's certainly booming at the moment compared to what it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, some good news in that. Thanks very much, Manager. And of course, what I've been able to ascertain, it seems to be very much something that's happening right across southern Queensland. Regions further north aren't seeing the same upturn, but I guess our proximity to Brisbane and the coast is making us a desirable location in terms of those property acquisitions and that new building construction that's happening. So good to see. Councillor Henshin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just again quickly on some statistics and figures there. If you quickly look down through the month of March, comparative to last year, in the application sections there was 57, and in March in 2021 there's 108. So that's a very interesting comparison. And if you look across those applications throughout the year, that's a very, very notable increase. So that's some positivity for you.
We're also seeing, of course, it's a bit of a double-edged sword in that we have significant industries in our region that have got incredible potential to grow at the moment. They've got demand right now. They're turning work away. So some of our big processors in the local region are turning work away because they've got their machinery, they've got the equipment, they've got the demand for their services, they just can't get the staff. And the reason they can't get the staff is because they can't accommodate them. So they've got people wanting to come here, they've got them signed up on work contracts, but they've had to put that back because they can't find any accommodation for them. And these are people who are often coming in from outside the region on 3-year contracts, large numbers of them. We're not talking handfuls, we're talking tens of people coming into our region to work, but they just can't find accommodation. We do have an accommodation crisis. Mr. CEO, can you tell us a little bit what's happening in council in terms of land officer, land identification of land, development opportunities and so forth?
Thanks, Mayor. Very brief is the officer was engaged January, February after the Christmas break. some of the reports that have come through to the general meeting on the property, so we're starting to process some of that backlog. There's the industrial land surveys, there's a whole raft of work yet to go into, and as the officer settles in and understands our process, she's already started to produce some of the reports that have already been brought to council as far as opportunities for vacant land, and it's aligning that role with the draft corporate plan, should that be what's adopted.
Thanks, Mr. Seo. And of course, council has a very proactive development incentive scheme now, whereby 75% reduction for eligible developers subdividing residential land anywhere within our regional boundaries. So that opportunity's there. Council is doing a lot. We're putting a land officer in place to help with the identification of land that could be perhaps made available. So we're doing a lot in this space, but for the benefit of the community, we're well aware of the land shortage. We're well aware that the construction industry is being held back by the fact that we just haven't got enough land, as is broader industry. So we'll continue to work hard on opening up as much of that as we can, and hopefully we can get enough development, private sector development interest in opening up more residential land. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge, it's great to see the table. I know I asked for this information a number of months ago when I first started at council, and it's great to see the addition of the table, the development assessment performance against legislative timeframes. I think it really opens up our eyes in terms of service delivery and meeting those timeframes, and I know there was some concern that we weren't maybe able to achieve those outcomes. So I just really wanted to acknowledge it's great to see. I agree with everything that you're saying. It's been a really fruitful conversation, but just wanted to acknowledge it's great to see that table there, and it's great to see that council is actually achieving. I can see, and we've talked about the issues around plumbing, and I can see that there is a solution in the pipeline, which is great, but it's just excellent to see that we are meeting those regulatory timeframes when it comes to assessing those applications. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, those in favour of the acceptance of the report? Thank you all. Carried unanimously. 7.4 is the Flying Fox Roost Management Review in relation to Blackbutt. At 43, I might go straight to you, General Manager, on this one to lead us in, if you could, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is in response to we received a petition from a number of residents down in Blackbutt. So we did engage with our NRM team at Red Leaf Environmental to do an assessment of the roost down there, and which is attached to the council meeting there. They did, probably in summary, there was 3 different types of bats found down there: the grey-headed, the blacks, and the little red flying foxes. The little reds are the ones that we had out at Preston last year. We had a massive roost of 40,000 or something. So the numbers here are nowhere near that, because it is quite a contained colony, just in the trees in the back. There's about half a dozen houses there with the trees in the backyards bordering on the creek. The issue that we do have here is that the grey-headed flying foxes are actually classed as vulnerable and under the environmental legislation, and I think both those and one of the other types of bats have got young, so they've got so that really restricts the times and what we can actually do as far as dispersal of the actions against the roost. So essentially, as recommendations that we've got down there is our all we can really do at the moment is do that community consultation, do that provide information to the residents about, I suppose, living with bats, and then look later in the year, because the breeding cycle of the different colonies in bats there really only leaves a small window of time to do any actual roost management actions. Probably just open it up to questions. But the report that we did, and we did get the experts in, and that is attached there.
Yeah, thanks, General Manager. So just for the benefit of the community and the media, Council, in response to a petition from the people of Blackbutt, who are, of course, terribly affected by this issue, as Councillor Jones has highlighted to us previously, Council then followed up on that by engaging Red Leaf Environmental, who are specialists in this space. They undertook a flying fox roost management review to determine if there's anything council could do about it. As a result of that, the recommendations come forward that due to the nature of the breeding program and so forth there at the moment, the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that council receive the flying fox roost management review and provide information to the community that currently council will not receive approval to undertake any dispersal or other management actions as the roost contain female bats in an active stage of reproduction and with dependent young, and provide information to the community about the importance of not touching or attempting to handle bats and how to minimise the risks associated with Australian bat lyssavirus and Hendra virus, and reassess the roost in August when dependent young are no longer expected to be present. Council, do we have a mover for that? Councillor Duff, a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. We'll get that on the we'll get that out on the floor now. Councillors wishing to comment in relation to that. Thanks, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that when we had the issue at Preston, it was very, the community was very upset about it. And I'm just wondering, what we did in Preston was we actually held a public meeting, and it was really well received, because what that did was the community who were most affected, the people most affected, were able to get it off their chest. They were able to actually hear firsthand from the officers, you know, what council can and can't do, because this, you know, if you send this out, there's a bit of a, you know, oh, the council's just not, we're just throwing our hands in the air. I'm just wondering whether, just to be advised by Councillor Jones, but whether it would be worthwhile to actually have sort of like have our, you know, general manager maybe go and the councillors go and meet with the actual concerned people and actually explain it to them. Just a thought around it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And in reference to the issue at Preston, we were pretty lucky there when we had that meeting. It wasn't that long, and that the flying foxes moved on. I struggle with this because I understand animals and endangered species and all that sort of stuff, but when do we put humans' mental health above this? Animals. I'm telling you now, the people along this street, and in reference to General Manager O'May's small contained group, it affects the whole town. The Mayor and I were down in Blackbutt at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and that sky in Blackbutt was completely darkened with flying foxes, and the noise was just atrocious. And I'm telling you, there's people that live on this creek that are at a point now where they're almost ready to take things into their own hands to try and get rid of these. They're the ones that are going to suffer, and they're the ones that are going to be locked up. And I'm sorry, I really struggle with this. We're putting animals, and there's millions of them, and I understand, yep, they've got young and all that. Don't get me wrong, I understand all that, but when do we put human lives and mental health above grey-headed flying foxes with babies? I know a lot of people that live there, and I'm telling you, they are really to the point of break. So I don't know, and I understand the position the staff are in, and I know that we're dealing with all these government departments and all that, and they say, no, you can't touch them and all that sort of stuff because of all the people that love the animals, and don't get me wrong, I want to stress that. But I just really want to make it known that these people have suffered for a long time. We're talking about going back in 3 or 4 months' time. Who knows what's going to happen in 3 or 4 months' time to the people that live on that creek? And I understand, I totally get it, but I just wanted to make the council aware and the people that I represent down in there, this is in my division, and I know they are at breaking point. And I really struggle with that recommendation, but I do completely understand the restrictions that are put on our staff. But I just want to let the chamber know that those people that live along that Taramio Creek and Blackbutt residents very close to it are really, really, really suffering.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. We've got this this motion here. I'd be recommending that we deal with that, and I think we should then continue this conversation after that, because I'd like to put forward or work with Councillor Jones to perhaps forward another motion. What I'm hearing from two senior councillors here, and I've been down there and seen it with Councillor Jones, he's taken me down there, the noise and the odour it's uninhabitable. It is inhabitable. People cannot live there with the noise, and the odour is absolutely. Look, it's like nothing I've ever experienced. Councillor Jones is absolutely correct in everything he says. He hasn't over-exaggerated this in any way. Those people are at their wits' end. They are living in an environment where they can't go out of their homes. Even inside their homes, the odour is unbearable. You can imagine living in that environment. And I think it's incumbent upon us, as you councillors are saying, to do something more than this. And I think we should have a discussion after this goes through about community meeting and what we're going to do following that community meeting to make the state government aware of the issue and what impact this is having on people's mental and potentially physical health. Councillor Schumacher, go to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly I can certainly understand the frustration with this issue. The information that's been provided here, we've got 3 solid reports and the code of practice, which has been really, I have been through and read quite carefully. I just had a couple of questions in relation to the report we commissioned. First question is, has there been a bat colony like this in Blackbutt before, ever? Or is this a new colony?
Yeah, through Mr. Yeah, I believe there's been a resident bat population there, and I suspect it may have been just the going with our experience in Preston, whether it was just the black bats and the little red flying foxes that have moved in, and they tend to be the ones that have got really large numbers, and even this one is saying they're 4,000. So I think it's probably there's probably been a small population that's been not of concern, and it's exploded with the little reds coming in, and but yeah, that's my understanding, not knowing the background.
Just reading through the recommendations for red leaf, it says at this present time, council will not receive approval to undertake any dispersal or other management actions that might disturb the female bats with dependent young. And that, of course, is where the suggestion is to reassess in a couple of months. I just wondered, that approval clearly comes from the Department of Environmental Sciences, is that correct?
Yeah, there's actually, the issue with these is there's 2. There's federal legislation and state legislation, so Nature Conservation Act from the states and the Environment Protection Biodiversity Conservation. The federal legislation so it's classified both, so it would be through both of those bodies. The recommendation around August is really around the breeding cycles, and the issue here, the complication is having 3 different species, and with their breeding cycles overlapping, you tend to have a long extended period with the dependent young.
Thank you. And the last question I have, I did note, the report around other areas, the Flying Fox Camp Dispersal Report, the Australian Bat Society position statement. It was interesting to read that, that out of, 16 of 17 cases, the dispersal, the issues actually in terms of the dispersed animals not actually abandoning the area and then taking up residence in other places certainly was a concern of mine. Even if we concentrated our resources and efforts into actually trying to disperse them from the Blackbutt area, their current roost, they could take up residence close by. I just wanted to understand, there was another option in the recommendations that said for council to consider if the colony needs to be moved would be the cropping of trees to a height that makes them unsuitable for bat roosting. This would need to be done when bats are not present, and consideration must also be given to the possibility that bats will move to another part of town, which might even be less acceptable than the current site. I just wanted to understand, in terms of that cropping of trees, has there been any sort of survey of the area? I know it takes in the Toromeo Creek area, just in terms of what council could actually do in that circumstance to stop this from happening into the future, because I understand it's an issue now, will continue to be an issue clearly, and probably what are the things council may be able to consider in the year ahead to stop this from happening again next year. I just wondered if there could be some more information around what that tree cropping might look like.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Yeah, I suppose that going back to the first point about the dispersal, and that's often when they are looking at assessing whether you do dispersal for a colony, it is likely that you'll just shift them from those trees 300 metres down the road, and often the concern is whether that takes them from where they might be on the edge of town to the middle of town, or so there is no guarantee where the bats will go. So, and cropping of the trees is essentially just is whether you drop them completely, you could remove all the trees and you'll disperse the colony. But what they're saying is, in that all those 6,000 bats will just end up 200 metres down the road. So yes, you'll fix it for that those people there, but you won't actually fix the problem because it'll just move it down the road so far. So certainly an unknown with those. These where they are basically concentrated now. There's I think 6 private property. So this is all on private property too. So there's none of this is on council land. So all of the trees are in private residences. Things. So I imagine that whether it is in August or when there is a period you can do, like you certainly could remove the trees. And I know the CEO had experience up, I think was at Gayndah, and that was the only way they could get is move the trees, and you just hope that they move to a more suitable roost location out of town, and that could be the best outcome. But as you can see from that report, sometimes people have spent, well, in that one, hundreds of thousands of dollars and achieved nothing.
Thanks, General Manager. Councillor Potter, did you have a question? No, you're right. Okay, Councillor Jones, I just want to deal with this one motion. Councillor Jones, but did you want to speak to this motion? Yep, please go ahead. Thank you.
I just want to make another quick comment, Mr Mayor, that I understand what the General Manager's saying. Yeah, there's 6 properties that are owned along that creek, but I just want to stress that there is far more people in Blackbutt affected by this than the 6 property owners along that creek. Yes, they do own the land where that is, but there is a huge number of people that are affected on that. And the unfortunate, and due respect to Preston, that colony was on the edge of town in the forestry. This is in the centre of Blackbutt, right in the smack bang heart of where all the business is, and it really is taking its toll and affecting a lot of people down there. So I just wanted to make that, yes, there is only 6 properties that own that land, but it is affecting a whole lot more people than that.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Before we put this to the vote, I just want to make councillors aware I'm going to move another motion pursuant to seeing this, which will give rise to further action. I just want to give you a heads up on that, and I'll share that shortly. So, councillors, we have the motion there, the recommendation there. Committee, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, council, I've heard what councillors have had to say, and we're all clearly very concerned about the distress this is causing to the people of Blackbutt. As Councillor Jones has said, it's affecting a lot of people in Blackbutt in a very adverse way. I'd like to put forward the following motion, that the committee recommends to council that council facilitates a community meeting at Blackbutt to in relation to the flying flocks assessment report, and invite the author from Redleaf Environmental in Toowoomba to present the report to the meeting, and also invite local member Deb Frecklington to attend the meeting and consider advocating to the Department of Environment and Science for an appropriate solution for the community. Councillors, I'm happy, Mr CEO, happy to have that modified in any way that you see fit. It's just a draft proposal to put up. Does anyone want any ideas for changing that or thoughts?
Mr. Mayor, one of the things in the past is the report is extremely accurate with whether the state and the Commonwealth Government will be on this position. And certainly understanding Councillor Jones's point, while they are pregnant, you will not move them. So that's not an opinion. It's just it would be very advantageous if we're having that meeting to issue the invitation to the relevant departments as well.
Thank you, Mr CEO. So in light of that, present the report to me and also invite departmental representatives. Also invite, where you are there, Liddell's fine, yeah, where you've got the cursor. Oh, sorry, no, and where it says also invite, 3 lines up. Sorry, Liddell, thank you. And also invite departmental representatives and yeah. Does that, what do you think, Mr CEO? Is that okay? Yeah. Thanks very much, Mr CEO.
Because the little greys, the Commonwealth legislation is extremely, I'm just trying to think of, the Commonwealth legislation has its own, so it's difficult enough with the reds and black, but once you get the greys and you get the Biodiversity Act stuff in there, it becomes extremely problematic.
Yeah, so as Mr CEO has articulated, this won't be an easy fight, but I feel, as Councillor Jones and Councillor Duff has said, we've got to get here and fight the good fight for the community and get our local member on board and take this to the state government and say that this isn't good enough. We've got people who can't live in their own homes, for God's sake, and this needs to be dealt with. It's just not good enough, and I don't think there's anyone in this chamber who'd disagree with that. How we do it, that's up to the group, but to council, to the committee, but we do need to do something more than just setting this aside until August. It's devastating what's happening down there. Councillors, does anyone have any other thoughts or ideas in addition to what Mark said to change that motion? Councillor Potter?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, it's great that we're inviting departments representatives, but is that just state or can we invite federal as well? Both, thank you.
Yeah, if we could perhaps change that to invite federal and state departmental representatives. Should we also, along with local member Frackington, invite our local member, federal member David Littleproud? David's always been a strong advocate for our region, and federal member Littleproud. Okay, any more suggested changes? If not, I'll now move that motion to the committee. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Councillors wishing to speak for or against that? Councillor Duff, thank you.
I'm very much in favour of it, having said before about the Preston experience. A lot of the people and Preston the school was affected. They were flying over the school, they were flying over houses, and people were worried about their health, and it was affecting their mental health. And I think to have the people who understand all about flying foxes, they were able to explain. Like, I agree with advocating and trying to shift the flying foxes, but just in the short term, to explain to people about how to manage just those health issues, because people get really worried that they're drinking water and all these things, and they were able to help the Preston people understand what was, how to mitigate some of the risks, and also also there was a big risk about kids touching those flying foxes. So just to have them there and to actually talk to the community about those individual concerns, I think is really, really important. But I'm also very keen into the future to try and make this a bigger issue so that communities like Preston and Blackbutt, and as the CEO had experience with Gayndah, that we can, into the future, deal with this in a better way, because it's not suitable. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. I'm hearing about the mental health issues here. Do we still have Alan Broome working for Boyedo on our ag network support for our farmers? Is it something the council committee would like to consider also inviting Alan to come down and share his business card, make people aware that he's available if they need someone to talk to? What are your thoughts, Councillor Jones? You're very much aware of this, the issues down there.
Look, any Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Anything that we can offer to the people down there, because as Councillor Duff highlighted, the community meeting we had at Preston, without elaborating too much, there was some pretty way out solutions offered by the community. That's my concern, because if people take it into their own hands, because they are at the point where they are ready to start doing something pretty radical, they're the ones that are going to suffer, and they'll be locked up or whatever over trying to keep their bloody family safe. So I think anything that we can offer the people down there just to help them, as Councillor Duff said, mitigate the circumstances, all that. I know there's a bloke that lives on the creek with horses. He's got horses right there. That was a big concern at Gaynor, Preston, sorry, and the houses, the feces and all that they drop over the top of that, they go up over the top of the... It's affecting everyone down there. It's not just, and I just had a quick mention or chat with the general manager here before. It's nothing personal, but there is a lot more than those 6 landholders that are affected in Blackbutt.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. In light of what we just said there, well, if we just go to the second line where it says in Toowoomba to present the report, comma. Yep. Sorry, present a report. Sorry, go back, Linnell. Comma after the word meeting on the next line. Third line, first word, meeting here, comma, space. Mr. Alan Broome from Baido. Comma. Oh, sorry, and also in, yeah. I'm not sure if that's grammatically correct, but just want to make sure we've got Alan in there so he can offer his services to the community if he's comfortable doing so through Baido. So I'm going to put that forward now. Councillor Potter, are you happy to second that, or do you want to make any changes?
I'm happy to second it, but I'm just wondering if we should add maybe someone from Queensland Health in there as well, Mr Mayor. I know it's going to be a big meeting, but
yes, so after
unless
the comma,
that's covered under departmental representatives.
Yes, a representative from Queensland Health.
Oh, Mr Mayor, with state and federal departmental, it'll be because you've
covered
got
that.
DATH and health and there's fact sheets, and I think it wouldn't be just environmental science. We'll invite a lot because
Okay.
Councillor Duff's point about the Preston meeting, part of it was the community, because there is a range of health. Don't pick the bats up, don't let them scratch you. If you see a dead one on the ground, call this number. The questions you get, because they contaminate rainwater tanks as they fly over. Lyssavirus doesn't live in water, but that still doesn't give people any comfort. The fact that, how do I protect my tank? Your tank's going to have to be flushed out. So that's an ancillary action that will occur going forward, because if this colony stays through to the end of the year, there will be rainwater tanks, and the councils I've worked with in the past, we've often offered that as a service to flush the tanks out, because they will need to be flushed out because those rainwater tank supplies will be contaminated. Now, I'm not sure, Councillor Jones, if we're there yet, but that will come if they stay there for an extended period of time. And so when people see them, dogs, oh, my dog picked up, so you get a range of that very basic question. So the State Department, please put them in if you feel more comfortable, but we would want to invite, at least make the offer to DAF Health and in Science to be there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for Mr. CEO. We know that you've got a wealth of knowledge in this space. You've been through it before in another region, so that'll be great. Look, I've got to put that forward. Thanks, Councillor Potter. You're happy to second that with those changes. Okay, councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Councillor Jones, as the Divisional Councillor, for standing up and speaking so passionately and giving us the facts about how this is affecting your community. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on, councillors, to item 7.5. Manager Patches here. Regulated dogs briefing. Then we'll go on to dog registration in units, and then we might break for morning tea after that. So 7.5 and 7.6 at 87 and 90. Manager Patch, would you like to come forward and give us an introduction on regulated dogs briefing? Thank you.
Good morning, councillors and Mr Mayor. Just in relation to, this is for your information, it came out of a previous standing committee wanting to know the process that regulated dogs goes through. I've tried to put as much detail in there as necessary, but in summary, there's 3 types of regulated dogs: restricted, menacing and dangerous. The ones that we generally deal with are the menacing and dangerous. Restricted are related to breed specific, and menacing, the distinction between menacing and dangerous pretty much comes down to whether it's a serious attack, where there's actually been physical injury sustained by either an animal or a person. So the process is quite detailed and can be very protracted and long drawn out if the aggressive or the aggressive dog owner actually exercises all their various appeal processes along the way. So any questions, councillors?
Yeah, over to you, councillors, on the report.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to Manager Patch, I had a question thrown at me, so I'll throw it to you. I didn't know how to respond. I give him my response and I hope it's right. If a gentleman has a dog in his yard and there is people riding horses past his property and they acknowledge and tell the dog owner that they are riding their horses past his property to get their horses used to dogs, what happens if that dog actually gets out and injures the horse or the person, and they have acknowledged that they are doing that to train their animals in being used to dogs and dogs barking and animals moving about? Where does that dog owner actually stand in that situation?
So obviously the reason why the horse owner may be taking their horse past that allotment is because the dog is quite aggressive in protecting its territory, I would assume.
Runs to the fence.
Yes, correct. So long as the dog remains on its property, there is no issue related to that. If the dog unfortunately gets out of its enclosure, whether it breaks through it or jumps over it, however they breach it, if they're then on public land at large and then cause injury to a person or an animal, unfortunately the dog owner will be liable.
Manager Patch, you've listed here restricted dogs.
Yes.
Can you just read, I can't pronounce some of them, for the benefit now, for the benefit of the community, and this is being live streamed, of course, for the benefit of the community and the media, can you please state the names of the restricted dogs and also tell us what are the regulations in relation to restricted dogs?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for putting me on the spot here with the pronunciations. I'm probably not going to pronounce them correctly, so my apologies to those lovers of these particular breeds, but American Pit Bull Terrier or Pit Bull Terrier, Dogo Argentino, Filia Brasiliario, Japanese Tosa, and Perro de Presa Canario, or Presa Canario. These particular dogs have been well known as fighting dogs. They breed them specifically for that type of sport, if you want to call it a sport. Those dogs are prohibited underneath our federal government's importation laws. So it is illegal to actually bring those dogs into the country. Because if you do, they're probably only really bringing them in for one particular purpose, which is illegal dogfighting. The restrictions around that, now when the Act first came in 2008, there were some people who it's more likely that there are American Pit Bull Terriers out there, and some of them are quite docile, placid animals, but they are also well known that, if they are involved in a fight, they can lock their jaws and it's very, very, very hard to get them off. So they unfortunately got included as a breed. There's always exceptions to a breed, which breeders of animals will always tell you, but as a general rule, the state and federal have gone and said these types of animals historically associated with dogfighting and quite severe dog attacks if and when they have occurred. So they've sort of pretty much been banned. So when it came in 2008, those people who did have a American Pit Bull Terrier, they had to comply with additional enclosure provisions, and those are very similar, whether it's menacing, dangerous, or restricted. So basically, you've got to have a self-closing, self-latching gate. It has to be based on the body size of the dog. It has to be most likely a 1.8 metre high fence. Most of those, they put some sort of a roof over it. Had to be, previously it was a minimum of 10 square metres. Had to have a roofed area for the dog and some bedding, but that's more about animal welfare stuff. So it's about trying to make sure that the dog can't get out of that enclosure. It was sort of, those animals were red ringed, for lack of a better term, that yes, you can have that animal, but it must live within the confines of this additional restrictive enclosure. When they take the animal out for a walk in public place, it must be muzzled and on a lead, held by somebody that can physically control the animal. And we don't actually have any restricted dogs within the South Burnett that are registered with us. There may very well be some Pit Bull Terrier cross dogs, but they, in the legislation, it's very specific that it doesn't actually include crosses. It actually has to be a purebred. And that's probably the nuts and bolts around the restricted dog stuff.
Yeah, thanks, General Manager. Thanks, Manager. Pleased to hear we don't have any of those registered, at least in the South Burnett. Manager, in terms of if a resident, or I guess we need the community to work with us on this. We can't be everywhere all the time. We haven't got eyes and cameras everywhere to identify dogs off leashes that are wandering the streets that could be potentially dangerous, who are out of their compounded areas. So we do need the community, media, community, we need you to work with us on this to get the message out that if you see a dog roaming the streets, please help council, notify council. Manager, how does the community inform council, and what action do we take if they're concerned about a dog that's wandering stray and could be potentially dangerous?
Yep. So if a dog's wandering, it doesn't necessarily need to be aggressive to be a problem or potential problem, because sometimes a good-natured dog may get out of its property, can cause traffic accidents and cause other dog fights to occur. So just as a general rule, we would encourage all dog owners to be responsible with their animals, and one, have a suitable enclosure for their dog, and two, if they're actually out walking them, to do so on a lead. That would actually enable them to control their dog. Specifically, if it is an aggressive dog that is out wandering, we certainly don't encourage people to try and approach the animal or to catch it. Please contact the council, 4189 9100, general number, whether that's during business hours or after hours. You can call that phone number. They'll go through to council's after hours services if council is shut, and it will go through and be triaged to see if it is a risk to public safety. If it is, then council will respond even after hours to address that public safety issue. If we move on from that either a compliance officer will respond to try and catch the animal. If there has been an attack, but the dog is secured back on its property, and we know where the dog's come from, then we will obviously be talking to the dog owner. An investigation will take place. We need to get, if there's any eyewitnesses, information from the dog owner, the victim. First priority always is public safety. Secondary is then making sure that if there was anyone injured, that they seek medical attention, or veterinarian if it's a dog or a cat, another animal. And based on the investigation, if there is sufficient evidence that the dog has attacked and that there is a risk to the public, then we will go through the declaration process, which is itemised in that report in quite a lengthy process.
Thank you, Manager. Other councillors? Okay, so Councillor, we've got the recommendation that Council note the information. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Potter. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.6, dog registrations in units at 90. Over to you, Manager. Thank you.
So this is another response to a request raised at previous standing committee to provide some information around what dogs need to be registered. So underneath the Animal Management Act, all dogs in Queensland must be registered unless they're under 12 weeks of age, and or if there's an exemption for the likes of a working dog, and there's specific criteria that must be met in order to get that exemption. Where the difficulty comes about is in multi-residential premises. So the state model local law that was put out says that you can't have more than 2 dogs registered at multi-residential premises. So if you have, say, 10 units, a complex that's got 10 units, that you can only have a maximum of 2 dogs, which is potentially problematic because who gets to have the first 2 dogs or the first 2 cats? Because the same criteria apply for cats. It is different purely by distinction on a legality matter as to if the units were strata titled. So if individual owners owned each of those units, complexes, and had their own allotment, then you'd be able to have up to 2 dogs on that strata titled unit. So potentially on the same large block size, you could have up to 20 dogs because of a legal technicality, as opposed to if there was 10 units owned by one entity, then you would only be permitted to have a maximum of 2 dogs for that whole 10-unit complex. So that's explanation as far as the local laws where they presently sit. I wasn't privy to any particular direction that council may wanted to tighten it up or make it more relaxed. If it is in relation to some proposed developments where there is going to be multiple or significant number of multi-residential, single bedroom, that they'll be occupied by elderly people, there's a high probability that those people will want to have a companion animal with them. And if it is council's desire to permit that with some controls or restrictions in place, then we would need to change the local laws to give effect to that.
Thank you, Manager. Council, there is, of course, 2 sides to this issue. So on one side, we've got situations where multi-residential premises exist across our region where they're not strata titled. So, for example, we may have four units on one lot of land. To state the obvious, the person that gets in first might have 2 little dogs. The other 3 families then, or pensioners, or whoever they may be, then can't have a dog. Now, for a lot of pensioners, widowers, having a dog or a cat is a very important part of their life. Their mental health, their company, it's really, really important. For some reason, in some cases, for safety, to have a barking dog can be a deterrent to when if you're an elderly woman or man living by yourself. They can be a really important asset as well as a friend. So there's that side of it. The other side of it is that we had 4 units and they've each got 2 dogs. We've got 8 dogs on one small block of land. And is that then a public nuisance for the neighbours? So I can see what you're saying. There's 2 sides to this. But what you're suggesting is that there could be an option to put conditions in place specifically for multi-residential premises that are over and above that would apply to non-multi-residential premises, to single premises, where if there's a public nuisance cause, there could be conditions that could cause us to revoke that registration. Now, that might be problematic, and then Granny might have to get rid of her dog, or she might have to move it on. But is that something, I suppose, I just want to put to council before we note this for information, in terms of the motion here, is that something council would like to further explore, to look at? I know I'm getting reports from the community that this is problematic. I know there is one lady who wants to register her dog and can't, because another family on the same block of land has already got 2 dogs in their unit. So, look, I'll take guidance from council. What are your thoughts, Councillor Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's every person's right to have a dog if they want one personally. And there are people in our community that actually need their dogs for their survival. So I really believe this is something we really should change and look into deeply. Thank you.
Councillor Schumacher?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I read the report carefully, and I do understand some of the issues identified in terms of, in some cases, whilst I agree with Councillor Potter and exactly what you're saying, it may not be appropriate to have 10 dogs at a 10-unit block of land. In saying that, though, I've been thinking about this and probably seeking the advice of the staff here. Is there opportunity for specialists, similar to the way in which our regulated dogs process works, where residents, as you say, may be able to apply for special or specific circumstances, and these could be judged on their merit for each potential area. So, I'm really mindful that in some cases it just may not physically be possible due to the land and the construction of the units or alike to have to allow every person the opportunity to have a dog or pet. But I'm wondering if there's some sort of compromise or some sort of criteria or some sort of special process that if people, as you say, widowers and things living in areas who would like a cat, and there's already 2 cats registered on the parcel, where council could consider those applications separately. It's probably my question. I don't know if I've been clear in that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Can I just ask, Mr. General Manager, under the current local law, number 2, Animal Management 2011, and its subordinate laws, there is no provision for us to consider more than 2 dogs on that lot at this, as you described there. Is that the case?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And that's taken from the state model local laws, because of historically there have, the more animals you put into an area, a small area, the more likelihood you're going to get nuisance complaints and issues with them.
I understand. Thanks very much. So in a lot of what you've said here, I am going to move I think what I'd like to do is get this one put to bed. We'll note the report, and I'm going to move another motion, if that's okay for council to consider, in relation to what Councillor Schumacher said. But before I do, still want to go around the room. Councillor Schumacher, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I understand you've got some ideas. I guess I was just trying to understand from the report that's been tabled here. I note that local law and the 3-dog permit process, and I guess I was thinking along those lines in terms of what opportunities there may be legislatively, because I'm mindful, there are things that certainly as councillors that we would like, but there's clear legislation around this. So I was just trying to understand, is there opportunity to actually adopt like a criteria or a 3-dog permit process for some of these existing lots?
Thanks, Councillor. So a 3-dog permit process, Manager?
So, as alluded to in the report, you could, because it's your local law, you can change it to reflect that you could have, in a multi-residential complex, you could have 1 dog with a permit, which then doesn't discriminate against whether you came first or you came second or you came third to the complex, and it will then be related upon nuisance. Is there a nuisance? Because there has been a increase in like lap dogs and small animals, cats for older people, companion animals, and so I think that the model didn't necessarily factor in that trend that has occurred, and little lap dogs may very well not cause a problem to other unit neighbours. And while that happens, what really is the problem? If they all live happily ever after, who really cares about that? Where there is a problem, then once it's investigated, and if it turns out, and council wouldn't, we wouldn't jump on them from a great height. You'd give them a reasonable time frame to, say it was barking, you'd say you need to get the barking under control. There are ways that you can train the dog to improve the barking and minimise the barking. If they can train the dog, great, happy days. If they can't, then after a reasonable time period, then unfortunately, given the context of where they're living, they may actually have to forfeit the ability to have a dog in that context or that particular animal.
Thanks, Manager. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, there's no, we've talked about lap dogs and we've talked about companion animals and things like that, but this doesn't take into account. So some of these built up areas where there's, multiple residents. We're talking some of these are housing commissions, some of these are pensioners, and some of these are ex-service personnel. And so they will have their service dogs that they actually need for their health. So in a situation like that, whether it's the RSL billers or anything like that, we really need to change this because this is almost archaic.
Thanks very much, Councillor Potter. I'm going to move on, Councillor Duff.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can discuss it further. Council, note the information. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Second, thank you, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. That's been resolved. I'm now going to move off the floor, and I'm going to do so in reference to the third paragraph on page 91. As follows, Linnell, that committee recommends to council. Actually, this may not need to be recommended to council, Mr. CEO, but I'm just going to recommend the report be brought back. Can I do that straight to the committee? Okay. So the recommendation is, Linnell, when you're ready, the motion is that a report be brought back to the next standing committee as to consideration of amending Council's Local Law Number 2, in brackets Animal Management 2011, and its subordinate local law in relation to the registration of dogs and cats on multi-residential premises. Full stop. Mr. CEO, would you mind just looking at that?
Mr. Mayor, and I'll yield to General Manager's greatest knowledge. We don't register cats, and so whilst listening to the debate, the point about cats in a multi-residential or multi-unit development would be moot because we would have no idea and no way to track. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we don't register them currently, so you wouldn't register them in one section. And this is the other aspect I would just add to it. This would be a project for the next financial year for the operational plan, because it will need a budget allocation. Like, it's easy enough to do, but we would need to engage solicitors or a process. So there is a cost. So if we could just pop it into for the resolution or the recommendation's fine, but it wouldn't take life until July.
That being the case, Linnell, on the second line it says, and its subordinate local law, in relation to the registration of dogs and multiple, sorry, at the end there, as part of the 21/22 operational plan. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you. General Manager?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would suggest that, as Manager Pat said earlier, registration is covered by the state legislation. This, I think it needs to say in relation to the keeping of dogs, and you could have dogs and cats in here because we're actually regulating the permitting of the keeping of dogs. So also, if you any of the conditions that you wanted around the permit, so you can have in the local law, we can have the permit conditions that they might need to be able to get those permits. So it's really around the keeping of. The registration is more of just the payment of it. So we're more concerned with the conditions.
Thank you, General Manager. I'll now move that as it's presented. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors, I'm not going to speak as the mover. I fully support what Councillor Potter has said here. I think it's absolutely imperative that we give careful consideration to this as part of our operational plan next year. I completely support what Councillor Potter has said. This is a critical issue for the mental health of many people, and I see it unfair where you have three houses side by side on separate lots. They can all have a dog, they can all have a cat, where you have 10 units on that are strata titled on one block of land. They can all have a dog, they can all have a cat, or they can all have 2 dogs and 2 cats if they want. But, widowers who are elderly people, servicemen, whoever it might be, vulnerable people in our community need their pets. The pets are such an important part of their lives. To be in an unstrata-titled set of multi-residential units, I think they're being unfairly disadvantaged, and I would strongly recommend this motion to the committee. Okay, other councillors wishing to speak for or against? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll look forward to that report coming back, and thank you very much, Manager, for that information. Councillor, I thought we might try and skip through the next 3 and then we can hop out for morning tea. We've got 7.7, application under funding round 6 for Queensland Feral Pest Initiative at 92. The recommendation is as presented, that the committee recommends to council. The council endorses submission of an application to the Queensland Feral Pest Initiative round 6 for 75% of costs to purchase 1080 for fresh meat baits for the next 3 years. Do we have a mover? Yep, Councillor Duff. Seconder? Yep, Councillor Jones. Speakers? No. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.8's at 93. The recommendation is that the committee recommend to council approach North Burnett, Cherbourg and Gympie regional councils to develop a Queensland Feral Pest Initiative application to fund a regional pest coordinator position for 3 years to assist landholders to establish feral pest management groups and deliver education and awareness workshops regarding feral pest management techniques. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Henson. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.9 at 94. Recommendation here is that the committee recommend that council approve the update to the criteria and procedure for assessing and approving the reduction of infrastructure charges. Addition in bold. Councillors, if you look down at the bottom of the report, you see the addition in bold. It says 75% discount for residential development, excluding in the rural residential zone. General Manager, do you just want to give us a quick understanding of what we're voting on here before the motion is moved? Thank you, and then we can move on.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. So this is just trying to clarify, so just operating with the policy for a couple of months. We find a couple of those questions come out. So just clarifying that the 75% discount is for residential, excluding the rural residential zone, because it is actually stipulated at 100% for residential development in the rural residential zone. The other parts were, I think, delegated, just the legal mechanism to get it happening, so getting a delegation through to the CEO. And I think we've clarifying discount applies to particular discount. And I think this, yeah, just clarifying there's some definitions that we've included in there to help. And the other one was, the big one was that it applies to I think you see. Did this clarify?
Yeah, we're just looking at the point they're clarifying the discount that applies to particular development types. Did we just want to get confirmation of that from manager before? Could we put this one aside and come back after morning tea, perhaps? Does that make sense? Look, I might do that now. Thanks, General Manager, because we need to make sure we get this right. Ensure what that is. So, look, it's almost 11 o'clock. It's 10:55. I'll now move that we adjourn the meeting for morning tea. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Meeting adjourned at 10:55. We'll return and deal with item 7.9 at 11:15. Thank you.
Region, it certainly creates jobs and all that sort of stuff, but my concerns, and I've raised them in the past, about if we have an influx of people come into the region, is our infrastructure up to it and can handle it? And I have concerns over that, particularly around the waste and the water consumption, knowing that Kingaroy's water security is high. So that's just some of the reasons, but yeah, I'm really concerned and very nervous about this development incentive scheme. I did acknowledge it, that I supported it from the start, but the further I've got into it, it just makes me nervous. So yeah, I won't be supporting this today.
Thanks, councillor Jones. Mr Zia, if you could just clarify the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Today's recommendation is from GM. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's just basically a tidy up of the previous one, and certainly not speaking for or against. And there will also be the delegation, is it the general, to endorse it fully or not? So I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Mr CEO. So just to confirm here, committee, we're not revisiting the Development Incentive Scheme policy that was resolved by council back in November, December last year. We're actually just approving the update to the criteria as shown in bold and the procedure for assessing and approving the reduction. So that's all what we're doing here. Okay, but thank you, Councillor Jones, nonetheless. Right, so councillors, we've got the motion there. Any other speakers before we go to the vote? Those in favour? Those against? Okay, carried 6 votes to 1 with Councillor Jones voting against. Thank you all. Okay, we'll go on now to item 8.1 and...
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
oh, I missed something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like-
sorry.
No, you're right. Just further to that report, I was wondering if I could move a motion from the floor, please.
That's okay, isn't it, Mr CEO? Yep, that's fine. Go ahead.
Linnell, I've just emailed you a copy of what I've drafted for council's consideration. Pilot project to support residential housing outcomes in Kingura. Thank you, Linnell. So I'd like to move that that the committee recommend that council investigate and develop a pilot project that aims to support and address the current lack of housing by identifying potential land holdings that council owns, including what may be underutilised green space that has been identified as superfluous to our community's needs in residential areas in Kingura. Considering what would be involved in subdividing or developing these council-owned parcels or underutilised green spaces. Consider council's options to sell these parcels for residential housing and or consider opportunities for council to stage or partner with appropriate building contractors to construct residential houses in Kingura. That the committee recommend that council bring a report on a potential pilot project a report on a potential pilot project be brought back to council for consideration in the 2021-22 operational plan to help address the current lack of residential housing in Kingura that is known to be impacting the local industry and causing housing stress for residents.
Thank you, councillor. Mr CEO, I might just refer to you. Any issues with, from your point of view on that?
Just the only thing I really very much appreciate the op plan for next financial year. Yeah, so given, thank you. So it would be a rec same as the last one. It'll go to the general. General will make the decision on yay or nay. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that recommendation.
Thank you, councillor. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, councillor Jones. Councillors wishing to speak, we'll go to councillor Shoemaker. Would you like to speak to your motion, and then we'll open up to the floor? Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Mayor. I've had some preliminary discussions with the council team, and I know this is some work that we're keen to unpack. There are a couple of parcels of land that I have identified in the Kingura area that I think, from the advice that I've been given, it could be quite a simple process for council to subdivide those parcels of land. And I guess we all know that the lack of housing in Kingaroy and in the South Burnett is a real issue at this current point in time. I guess I'm looking for opportunities. We know that industry is struggling to find residential housing for its employees, and I think there could be opportunities in partnering with our local building industry to actually either, I've discussed with GMO May, well, if we subdivide the lots and sell them off, maybe it might encourage building activity. But I'd also like to open up our minds and think about how council may actually be able to use some of its capital to build potentially spec homes in partnership with the local building industry or appropriate building contractors. I understand there'd be some sort of tender process, and to really try to help address the housing needs. I know the development incentive scheme was something we were keen to adopt early in the piece because we see the need. There are residential housing developments that developers have been sitting on in the area that just aren't going ahead. And, to hear that professional people are moving away from our region and that industry is really struggling to get housing for their employees, I guess I'm keen for council to investigate what its opportunities are to use some of the land that we have to meet these needs. So I'm thinking about some sort of pilot project. I'm thinking, I'm mindful of the risks. So these would need to be addressed and considered with caution. But I do think there is an immediate need, and I think this council is in a position to do something to help. So that's why I'm bringing this forward today, Mr. Mayor. I see Kingaroy, if we start here as a pilot project, it might inform other projects of this nature in our region into the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I'm extremely impressed with this motion. I'm fully supportive of this because I made comment or put a challenge out to Councillor Shoemaker in one of the meetings not that long ago, and I'm very, very, very impressed and very happy that you've taken that challenge because, as you've just alluded to, there's a high demand for housing in our region, all that sort of stuff, and I know that there's other councils across South East Queensland that have invested money on behalf of ratepayers and done commercial and residential developments, and has been a huge success. So just one quick question to verify, you're building or considering to build and sell, not to hold and maintain as council, but to sell to the public?
Absolutely, my intent. So if we need to incorporate that into the motion, more than happy to. I think my thoughts are, with the money that we raised from this kind of project, that would then be reinvested back in our region through, community infrastructure. And like you say, we know we've got significant water issues for Kingaroy. We are going to have to raise revenue somehow to meet these needs. So I guess this could be an option to help fund that forward infrastructure that we need to really grow Kingaroy and the South Burnett. So that's my thinking there. Definitely the intention is to sell. And the reason why I'm thinking about the construction phase is, as I've discussed with GMO May, if we just subdivide them, we run into this, the current situation where there may be some blocks of residential land, but there aren't houses on them, and we really need roofs for people to live under. So that's why I'm suggesting we build on them, yes.
No, I thank you very much. That answers my question and my concerns, but fully supportive of this, and as we've identified on a number of occasions, the time is right to be selling real estate, because the real estate agents tell us they haven't got any more properties to sell. So I think it's a prime time to capitalise on the opportunity that we have as a council, and I think it's a wise investment on ratepayers' money, and if we can get a return and make a profit, I think it's a win-win for everybody. Fully support.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm 100% supportive. The only thing I just thought might be able to be tweaked, and I've already had this discussion with in my portfolio of properties, was that the green space is a long-term project, because by the time you get it, a lot of it's zoned for recreational purposes, and you've got to go through the state government process. But right across our region, there's a lot of what we've identified through the property section is low-hanging fruit, which is just it's already freehold land. It's all across our region, and that would be stuff that we could do straight away rather than pinning it, just leaving it to Kingura and including the green spaces, because that involves community consultation. It's just going to slow the whole process down. And I was just wondering whether what you thought about, rather than just making it more of a regional focus, but just on those blocks that are council owned.
Certainly, I'm hearing you, Councillor Duff, and as a long-term outcome, definitely a regional focus. That is my intent, absolutely. This really, I want to start small, think big, but start small. And I think I have identified a couple of parcels of land around Kingura that may be something that we could move on quite quickly. I've included in the motion identifying potential land holdings, so I'm happy to put freehold land holdings if that makes you more comfortable, that council owns, including what may be underutilised green space. I guess the purpose for this is really a desktop analysis. I really want to take a deep dive in terms of what that process may be, and really understand. I'm hearing you, but I think we've got to start somewhere, and this is an opportunity. We know at the moment that there are no available rental properties in Kingura. What there is very small. We also know that Kingura is home to major industry, and a lot of our professional people live in Kingura. So I just think it is a good place to start, but by no means is this the end. This would be a pilot project to get us started, to learn some of the things that we'll need to know to take this on a regional journey. Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'll go to you shortly, Councillor Potter, but Councillor Duff, I can't say anything other than completely agree with Councillor Shoemaker. I understand your point and you want to have a regional focus on this, but I think Councillor Shoemaker has made it very clear this is a pilot project. And I think we all support what you're saying. We want to grow the populations of every community and open up land in every town. But this is an emergent need that is needed in Kingura. We could just isolate Kingura, run a pilot project here, learn from that experience, I think is what you're saying, and then we can roll it out across the region in the medium term. I think that's a sensible way to do it, rather than trying to take a really big, broad view, and we might get that wrong. So I'm fully supportive. I think it's a brilliant motion, fully supportive of it. I think it's a tremendous step forward. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I realise we've got some places around Kingura, considering we've got, how many was it, 27 green spaces, 20 in Kingura, but I would really like, because I do know we have some areas just outside of town in Tobinga Village, whether we could maybe include that in the area, if that's included, please, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, so does Kingura include Tobinga Village,
Yeah.
Councillor Shoemaker?
That would be my intent. Yep. Division 3, I will be working with you.
Councillor Shoemaker, Linnell's just inserted identifying potential freehold land holdings. Are you happy to have that inserted in the motion?
Probably just seeking GMO May's advice there. Is that a word that needs to be there, or do we just go with land holdings? Does that restrict us in any way? I think you understand my intent.
Yeah.
We've had some discussions about this, so welcome your comment, GMO May.
Yeah, it's either or. Obviously, if it's freehold, then we would see that as a lot quicker process, in that we don't have to go through if it's reserved land, then there is a process of getting that turned back to freehold before you could essentially build or sell it. So if freehold's not in there, I would take it as read that we're looking at freehold land. If it's in there, then it clarifies it. I don't see an issue.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Happy to hear or acknowledge that of your support of this. The other good point about this is we have discussions coming up in regards to our assets and our asset management and how we're going to do that. This will be a driving force to make us focus around these sort of things. So this is a huge step forward for this council, I believe. It's a huge opportunity for us to benefit and the community to benefit. And I think it's a great idea, and I take on your comments about Kingura and the surrounds being a pilot, and then if it's successful, we can certainly spread it across the region. This is a fantastic, more than sensational motion. Happy to support this fully.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Thank you, Councillor Duff, too, for highlighting the freehold land holdings and the issues with the state government in terms of freeing up recreational reserves and whatever else. It's only added to the completeness of the motion. Councillor Potter, Councillor Henshin. Okay, off to you first. Talk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I commend Councillor Shoemaker on this. This is, and we all know as we stand in this room, we have talked about this over the last 6 to 10 months, and this has got the potential, as Councillor Jones has alluded to. It's a pilot project for sure, but again, commend Councillor Shoemaker in putting this recommendation forward. But let's not just stop there and think about where this could go in the entire South Burnett, in our other towns and villages as well. This is well done.
Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Sorry, Councillor Potter, you've been waiting patiently.
You're right, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that later on in the agenda, here's something I prepared earlier. So we've got another 2 pieces of land. So with General Manager Amay, Manager Leanne, and our new lands officer, it's been really good that we've already got someone working in this space, going through our land, trying to find the blocks that we can dispose of. So it's really good that we've actually almost started this, as it were.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Can I just add, and then I'll come back to Councillor Shoemaker, that this, to me, councillors, is council working at its best. I have said before that council's role is to provide an environment in which we lay down fertile soil upon which our industry and our community can flourish. And of course, we know that without population growth, our region won't progress. And on that basis, I think this is a strategy that will go well and truly strongly towards laying down that fertile soil. So I would commend Councillor Shoemaker on putting forward such. Councillor Shoemaker, we'll go to you to wrap up and then we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I think this is a team effort. I think we've got a fabulous team here who is thinking big and who is looking at the future. We've got enormous challenges as a council, and this is one of the many steps we're going to have to take. I think this is a great opportunity. I appreciate council support. I think it's a great opportunity for us all to learn together and then see what could be for our region. Just because it is the way it is doesn't mean it has to be into the future. So I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the team's support with this, and look forward to working with you all as we go on this journey together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, we'll now move on to item 8.1, the Waste Management Portfolio Report, and a pleasure to introduce Councillor Froloff. Thank you. Ros.
Thank you, Mayor. Waste Compliance Officer position. Interviews for the combined fixed-term position up to 6 months with the North Burnett Regional Council, the Cherbourg Aboriginal Shire and the South Burnett Regional Council Waste Compliance Officer position are now completed. As preferred candidate has been identified, and Council is presently awaiting for the human resource selection process to be finalised, anticipating that this officer should be starting in the second quarter, which I'm happy to say that she started on Monday. Funding for this joint position was from a successful state government grant, which will enable the partnering councils to focus upon legal dumping and littering within the 3 jurisdictions. Discussions with state forestry and mapping of significant illegal dumping hotspots in forestry areas within the 3 regions have already commenced. And the capital works update is the Maidenwell Transfer Station. Construction of the new automated waste transfer station in Maidenwell is go ahead with, we're just waiting for the feedback from the state departments regarding vegetation clearing and access to and from the main road, and hopefully will be completed in June 2022. I'd like my waste management portfolio to be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Just a question in relation to illegal dumping. I understand there's been some instances that Councillor Potter and I have been aware of around the Kingura area, and I was just wondering, in terms of council's jurisdiction, like how are we actually looking to manage illegal dumping? Do we do some surveillance in areas? Are you looking for that kind of information, or is it really, you know, cleaning up the mess? I guess I'm just trying to understand, how can we as councillors help you to combat this issue, particularly around Kingura? It's quite disturbing.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Shoemaker. So if we get any of those reports, obviously we'll investigate it, and first off we'll try to identify, if we can, who the offender was. So, and then following on that, issue on-the-spot fines. We obviously need to do the clean-up. But if there's those areas that are, and that's probably part of this officer's role, we'll look at if those areas that are continually being attacked, I suppose, for want of a better word, is how we can address that, whether it be through covert surveillance cameras. It is difficult sometimes to pin these unless we can get, some people are quite clever. They'll have, try make sure they hide their identity as much as they can. But yeah, it is really just following up. If we have those hotspot areas, is there ways we can do vegetation clearing or something to reduce them? But really our response at the moment is following up, clean up, and where we can issue on-the-spot fines.
Thanks, Chair. General Manager, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor, as a follow-up from Councillor Shoemaker's question, the areas in issue are with regards to needles being dumped, and this is not a small issue now. This is actually quite an enlarged issue, considering recently we had one left in a mailbox, and I think that this is something we need to look into. And there are places that we have tagged that we all know about that probably we need to seriously consider putting cameras up at least. So if that's something we could look into seriously, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. So we've got the report there. Thanks very much, Councillor Froloff. Clearly, we've got some issues here around illegal dumping and littering, and it certainly is in conflict with our corporate plan around aesthetics and livability in the presentation of our region, as is the needle disposal issue, which seems to be becoming worse in our region. So, councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Thank you all. Councillors, in following on from that, before we go to Councillor Duff, and just picking up on the issues that our Kingura councillors have raised here, I'd like to put forward two motions. Number one, that and my sincere apologies for doing this again, Anel, you do a sterling job. It's illegal dumping and littering report. That'll be fine. That a report be brought back to the next standing committee meeting as to options for signage in relation to community education and awareness on illegal dumping and littering for consideration as part of the 21-22 operational plan. Full stop. Mr. CEO, any comments on that? Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, Councillor, I just wanted to, I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. I'll just speak to that quickly, Council. I've noticed, for example, in Toowoomba region, they seem to have quite a bit of signage around that says, please do not litter our beautiful region, or please do not legally dump. I wouldn't even mind seeing some signage that says fines apply, and encourage the community to actually dob in a dumper. I'd like to see us run a dob in a dumper campaign. I know when I was a boy, the the whole littering issue got on there. There used to be a big TV campaign about, do not litter. And everyone became really conscious of it. And people started dobbing in litterers. The amount of rubbish on our roadsides, when our guys are slashing, they're constantly coming across loads of rubbish on our roadsides. And then there's the big piles of illegal dumping. I mean, my dad walks the roads and picks up rubbish in his retirement because he wishes he was still on council. But anyway, that's another story. But he finds prams, baby capsules, all sorts of things thrown out on the side of the road. It's absolutely awful. I'd like to see us embark on a strategy to deal with that. So that's really what it's about. Does anyone else want to speak for or against that? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. The second one I'd like to put forward that council. So this is needle disposal strategy. Needle disposal issue. Is fine, Linnell, and the motion is simply that a workshop, that council convene a workshop, with relevant community stakeholders to consider strategies for addressing the issue of needle disposal across the communities of our region. Full stop. Do we have a second, councillors? I think Councillor Potter. Speak to it quickly. I'd like to think that we can bring the police in, maybe Queensland Health, relevant agencies, drug arm agencies that might be able to help us with this issue. And let's get our heads around the table and see if we can start to work through some strategies to address it as a starting point at least. That's all I had there. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you for your time on that. Thanks again, Councillor Froloff. Okay, we'll now go 9.1, which is 105, and introduce Councillor Duff to present the Rural Resilience, Parks and Gardens, Property and Facility Management and Indigenous Affairs Portfolio Report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In Rural Resilience, Alan Broome continues to progress the development of an adverse event plan for council. The development of this plan, which is funded from the Federal Government Drought Communities Program, is aimed at assisting local communities to assist preparedness and community response to drought and other natural disasters or adverse events. Alan has been attending various community events and functions seeking input and feedback from community members to inform the plan. In Parks and Gardens, parks staff have once again been very busy following the beautiful rain received this month, maintaining entrances and exits to all towns. The staff have done a fantastic job considering the rainy days and heavy dews, which limited the number of days this month that mowing could be undertaken. During these wet days, the staff have installed planter boxes in the Kingura forecourt, which has been made with recycled alloy offcuts with spring-weighted wheels for easy movement to any location. These planter boxes can house 4 square pots and 1 rectangle pot and have been planted with autumn plants ready for the coming months, and pots will be rotated seasonally. Planting of permanent plants has begun on the corner of Gore and Lamb Street, Mergen, with more to continue over the coming weeks, waiting on stock to arrive to complete this project. The table settings were erected at Stirling Park, Bunya Mountains in time for Easter. Staff have been consulting with the community group regarding the tree plaques, wording and design, which will now be manufactured by Gumnut. The Nango Butter Factory Park is now fully completed with the all-inclusive space, shelters, barbecues, new turf and line marking of the bicycle track. The community feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Congratulations to all involved. Customer requests. Following the adoption of Council's Customer Service Charter, NRM and Park staff are continuing to review and action customer requests within required timeframes. Staff have reviewed processes and intend to conduct further process mapping and complete written procedures. The aerodrome's ongoing twice-weekly inspections are continuing at Kingura Aerodrome, with weekly inspections undertaken at Wandai. Council staff met with members of the Wandai Soaring Club to discuss the survey area for the new wildlife fence. The committee are very supportive and are looking forward to the commencement of this project. This project is in the procurement stage and construction to start middle of May 2021. Cemeteries. General maintenance is continuing across the region. Cemeteries with planting starting in Wandai and Mergen. Mergen cemetery drainage issues have been addressed with some minor works still to be finalised in the coming weeks to complete. Dams. The dams are looking a picture for the recent Easter holidays with expected bookings of over 1,000 campers for Baduma and 600 for Bjelke-Petersen Dam. I'd like to congratulate council staff and managers for keeping calm and professional, working together during the COVID restrictions leading into Easter, fielding hundreds of phone calls, texts and emails during this unknown period. The annual Festival of the Dams event at Baduma Dam is scheduled for 15th and 16th of May 2021. The rail trail, some minor maintenance issues have been detected following the high rainfall along the trail at Memrambi and Mergham. These issues are currently being repaired and drainage restored to stop erosion continuing. Council is currently also working with TMR following the roadworks between Kingura and Wandai, as the drainage from the road has been directed across along the rail trail, and if we receive heavy rains, will damage this section of the trail. Following the successful completion of the Get Out, Get Active, Get On Your Bike program, Council have been left with 15 mountain bikes with no further planned use. Therefore, Council invited not-for-profit community organisations wishing this, across the South Burnett to submit an expression of interest demonstrating the intended use by the 31st of March 2021. At the time of this report, Council had received 7 applications. Property and facility maintenance, the progress of activities and projects being undertaken by the property team are included in the attached operational update. Indigenous Affairs Council recently registered with Reconciliation Australia to assist the development of a reconciliation action plan for South Burnett Regional Council. GM O'May and I have continued to meet with Councillor Bronwyn Murray from Sherbrooke Shire Aboriginal Council to map out a process to develop a RAP agreeing to extend membership of the working group to include other community members. Following guidelines from Reconciliation Australia and input from our local Aboriginal community, Sherbrooke Shire Aboriginal Council and South Burnett Regional Council representatives, we are progressing the development of a reconciliation action plan for South Burnett Regional Council. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. The report be received for information. The committee. Anyone wish to speak? Questions? Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just would like to ask a few questions through you, Mr Mayor, with regards to Nanango's Butter Factory Park. It says that it's now fully completed, but the money distribution, the distribution of funds for that, how much did council actually put in for that park itself? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd probably just have to take that on notice to get the actual, the final figures for you, Councillor Potter. But yeah, you can follow that up and later in the meeting.
Yeah, look, that'd be great. Thanks, General Manager Ray. If you could bring that back, perhaps to the next committee, to the next meeting, that'll go as a question on notice for the next meeting, and we can get a report on the final figures for the park. Happy with that? Yeah, thank you. Other questions, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you. I look forward to that report about Butter Factory Park. I was just going to make the statement that I really do think it is the standard that we aim for as a region when it comes to parks. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge the work Councillor Froloff has done in her division with her community and having conversations about that design and the concepts. It was great to see how excited you were through that whole process, and then just to see the finished product. It really is exceptional. So well done to the Nanango community. I think it's been a great demonstration of the collaboration and what is possible when we're working together. So congratulations, and certainly it's probably the most beautiful park in the South Burnett, so congratulations, it's just gorgeous. I did have a couple of questions on notice which I'll bring up. I just had one that I was going to address first, just in relation to the aerodromes, Councillor Duff. I know we talked briefly at one of the previous standing committees about some correspondence we'd received around the wildlife issues on the Kingura aerodrome and runway, and I just wondered if that was being addressed. And I also wanted to confirm, and I'm happy for this to come back, I wanted to understand the mowing arrangements for the Kingura aerodrome. Does council actually do that work? Are they volunteers? How do we partner in that project? I'm probably keen for some more information on that. So I think they're probably my main questions at the moment. And then I've got my questions on notice.
Yeah, I might hand to Jim. Maybe I think they're volunteers.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Yeah. So essentially at the airport, we provide the tractor and slasher equipment, but the Soaring Club have volunteers that actually undertake the work. I think it's down to maybe two main fellas that do it, but yeah, it's just basically a partnership arrangement where we supply the equipment and the club out there is supplying the labour for that. And the animal, that's a work in progress. We've sort of had a meeting with the airport reporting officer is continually reporting the issues there. The flying doctors are reporting issues with the kangaroos on the airport. So and we're meeting with the Soaring Club representatives. We've got a meeting next week. Might be just trying to progress that matter and where the say for a fence where the best location would be that wouldn't interfere with operations out there. So yeah, is ongoing issue that's basically a work in progress.
Yeah, thank you. So my questions on notice, I had asked some questions, and I know many of us have received phone calls in relation to the picnic table shelters being constructed at the Coolabunnya rest stop. Keen to understand that. I know there's also some at the Stewart River rest stop, and I know we've had some discussions about that infrastructure, so keen to understand that process. What's the cost of the structures and how is their location for installation decided? And what's happening with regards to the replacement of the concrete tables and chairs in Kingura Memorial Park? I've had a number of people raise those issues with me. They really are quite grubby. If you can answer those questions, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so thank you for the question. So the picnic shelters are at Coolabunnya. So this, so those picnic shelters, the Coolabunnya rest area is actually a Department of Transport main roads rest area. We do the servicing of the toilet blocks under a contract with the main roads just for servicing. So they are actually a main roads rest area. So they've actually had a program where they are actually putting these picnic shelters across a number of their rest areas, not just Coolabunnya. I think we've got 3 in our area. So there's the one on, or both on Stewart River, the Stewart River one on the Bunya Highway, and then on Chinchilla Wandai. So they're putting, so it's a program that TMR have introduced. As far as costs of the structures, so again, they're putting them up at their cost, so we're not involved with that. Basically, we got advice of this, so that just basically where the locations and where they are doing it. I think also at Coolabunnya they are doing some maintenance on the toilet block while they're going there, which is appreciated. But yeah, they're TMR installation, so they're running that program. And so the replacement of the tables and chairs in Kingura Memorial Park, this had been discussed with council. We were looking at that, but it was decided to put that on hold until we do the master planning of Memorial Park, so that we don't end up sort of putting shelters there and then develop a master plan with a different style and replace them in 18 months' time or something. So it is still certainly part of council's intention to upgrade those, but it was basically we do the master plan and do it once, do it properly.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. Yeah, because we actually put that on hold. We had some tables, or picnic tables, and they were ordered. We cancelled the order because we wanted to get it right, because we didn't think the aesthetics of the area suited the table, so we wanted to do that master plan. So, I mean, the community will have to just bear with us until we just get that master plan happening.
Yeah, thank you. And just in relation to those picnic shelters, so probably my main concern is we've talked about those rest stops and some of the behaviours and activities that happen in them, and also we've talked about, whether it's actually worthwhile, and I understand now that we've received some money from Main Roads to actually maintain them, but they are quite disgraceful. The one at Coolabunnya is absolutely terrible, like as an entrance into Kingura. I think from a tourism point of view, if I pulled up there, I would not be impressed. So I guess my concern is how are these decisions that Main Roads are making about what they're investing in actually made, and what is our relationship and partnership with them, and is there any way to leverage some of this? Because if they're investing, that's great, but my concern is, are they investing in the right things, and so are we having the right conversations with them up front about, you know, what opportunities there are and what are the needs in our region. I was probably just very disappointed to see that the rest areas sort of established in areas I've seen people camping in them. You know, it's not ideal. I just, yeah, probably keen to understand what's our relationship to. Yeah, I appreciate the support and not knocking that in any sense, but is there a way we can influence some of these outcomes before, you know, we're all surprised by the fact they've gone up? Is probably what I'm thinking anyway. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to ask the questions.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further on from the Coolabunnya shelters that have been put up, I was actually contacted by a gentleman yesterday, and he informed me that one of the shelters has been put up in front of a road reserve that may be needed at a later date if that land is ever subdivided. I'm just wondering, because if that was a community member that put something up on a road reserve, we would kick up a bit of a stink about it. So what happens in that situation if that person decides they want to subdivide? It's not up to them to pay for that removal of that particular shelter, is it? Sorry, this will have to be on notice. I'm very sorry about that, yes.
Pete, I'll go first. Actually, it'd probably be handy to know that when you're building a road reserve, planning doesn't apply. Having had other councils and areas, so there is, because roads are outside planning schemes. If it's within the questions on notice, and I suppose is without wanting to bury people with another report, the tenure of the site and certainly understanding and appreciating, I very much appreciate the questions because it brings it into focus. It's Peter, our General Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not necessarily our site whilst we're associated with it. So whatever happens to that site going forward, it may not be council's decision, for example, to remove it. So there would need to be, and very much supporting your questions, there would need to be, if council decides that it's no longer a priority or community feedback is that there are other places to better invest that money, it's probably a conversation we will need to start to engage with on main roads. Short answer is that if it's main roads a site and they want to build it on a road reserve, they can build it on a road reserve, and if there's a subdivision down the track, the thing will have to be pulled down. And that, I mean, like the practicalities of it is that state government doesn't need to come to us for any, and I don't think they would need building approval, but they sit outside. They have their own processes for building approval. So pretty much, I won't say they can do what they want, but yeah, it's if it's their site, they can put what infrastructure they like where. Hate to say, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We might look to wrap this up if that's okay, General Manager and Councillor Duff.
Sorry, I know that you're
but
in a hurry.
Make
but
it quick, thank you.
I just think that it's an important issue and it is something we've identified, and maybe as a council we need to bite the bullet and move for and write to main roads and just say, well, this council doesn't support having the amenities there, the tables there, and outline the reasons why, and just see if we can start that conversation, because otherwise we'll just continue down the same path ongoing.
Yeah, Councillor Duff, I just interject. I think this will get picked up in our operational plan. After we do the corporate plan, part of that will be to start to look at our regional parks and facilities, including rest areas. And I think we'll pick that up as part of that process. And it may well be, if we identify that that's not a suitable location, we can then go off to main roads and push for that to be removed. But thank you for the question, Councillor Shoemaker, and thank you, General Manager, for the response. And for the benefit of the community, just to clarify, the Coolabunnya shelters that are currently being installed are being done so by the Department of Main Roads. They are paying for it. The community here is not paying for it out of ratepayers' funds. It is not council's rest stop, it's Main Roads rest stop. Replacement schedules, new works are determined by Main Roads and well in advance of construction, and that we are paid by Main Roads to maintain the toilets, and that's under a contract we've got. So thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Important to clarify that for the community. Okay, so where are we at? We've got the recommendation there. All in favour? Receipt of the report. Thank you, councillors. Passed. You carried unanimously. The Parks and Gardens update is there, councillors. You've got it presented to you. And the recommendation is that it be received for information. Would you like to move that, Councillor Duff? Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any questions on the contents of the report, councillors? The only thing I was going to bring to your attention is in terms of capital works, Councillor Shoemaker distributed an email from a group with some great concepts, I thought, into using local timbers and materials to construct family-friendly playground areas for young families. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And I don't know if anyone can sit up on the camera around council. That's one example, using local timber, local materials to create a playground environment, a theme park type playground environment. In my view, that's the sort of thing we should be focusing on, because we want families to stay here. Families are telling us they want better facilities. So I congratulate you, Councillor Shoemaker, on taking the lead and sharing that. And I'm hoping that over coming months we'll be having some serious conversations about developing the right sort of facilities for our families for the region. Thank you. So other than that, Councillor Duff, you move that the report be received. Is it the operational update? And we've got a seconder. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Properties operational update 113. It's as presented there, councillors, and motion that the property operational update be received for information. We have a mover, Councillor Duff, seconder, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Questions on the report, councillors?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to congratulate Leanne on the Manager Leanne on the report. It's just drought projects, CapEx projects, and Works for Queensland projects pretty much, and also fingers crossed for those BM Building Better Regions funding. They've all been submitted, and we're hoping that we can get some good outcomes with those.
Thanks very much, Councillor Duff. Of course, Manager Leanne's here. We've got a long list of property assets across the region, many of them ageing, require a lot of work in terms of ongoing inspection and repair and rehabilitation. So thank you to the properties team for all the work they do in looking after those assets spread right across our region. Okay, so councillors, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Report received. Thank you. Next item is the draft level of service plan for NRM and Parks at 118. Councillors, I'm going to put forward here that this matter lay on the table and that the report be brought back to the May Standing Committee meeting, and that in the meantime we engage in a workshop with the Parks and Gardens management and senior staff to work through the proposed service level plan. So I'd look to move that, thank you, if I can. I don't know if you don't mind putting that. The item 9.4 lay on the table until the next standing committee, and that prior to such a workshop be held to consider in detail the draft level of service plan. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Duff.
I just wanted to...
Oh, sorry, hang on, it's procedural. Sorry, Councillor Duff. No, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillors, Peanut Sculpture, Lions Park, Kingura at 145. And I might hand over Councillor, I might hand over to you, Councillor Potter, perhaps to talk us through this, as I know you've been working actively with Councillor Shoemaker and the community on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I must commend General Manager May, Mark Watt, and Acting Manager Watt with regards to this as well, and all the staff involved in Parks and Gardens. Thank you, Councillor Duff. And they have been fantastic, and they've got a draft plan here, which is fantastic. We met with the Big Peanut Committee at Lions Park and went through everything, and I don't think they left a stone unturned. And even the plaque that is down there is going to be replaced into a garden with the Lions Park there as well. So, you know, they've thought of everything when it comes down to this. And if you look at the plan, the sculpture will actually sit where the barbecue is because it's a beautiful raised area. And as you're driving down the road, the first thing you'll see, you know, besides the pin-up van is the pin-up sculpture. And it's going to look fantastic. I can't wait. And if you read the report, you'll also see that we will also have permission to reproduce the sculpture, because I do believe the artist is signing over the rights to the sculpture. So we actually have the ability to produce miniature sculptures that we can actually sell in our information centres and things like that. So it's not just the pin-up sculpture in the park. We now have the ability, because of this, to, you know, to actually potentially make some money. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too big here. But not as big as the big pin-up, which can be listed on the trail of big things, because it's more than, now what's the percentage? It's General Manager May, there's a particular percentage that, is it 10 times? I can't remember, but there's a particular percentage that the actual item has to be above the original size, and ours fits into that. So we can now be on the list of big things in Australia. So another very exciting thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Do we have the motion as presented there on the agenda committee? Councillor Potter, are you proposing that you'll move that?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, so we've got that moved by Councillor Potter. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Questions? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question. It just says on the front that the funding in the officer's recommendation, in the financial resource implications, the cost will be has been funded through sponsorship and secured to meet these costs. But the cost on the back at the bottom of the report, the sculpture is 3.5 metres high and will be placed on a concrete plinth funded by council. Engineering certification shall be provided. Who's funding that, and do we have that covered as well? Is that through we've received the funding through a grant, or how's that working?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we've actually using the arts funding because it's part of the outdoor sculpture trail. So we're using some of that art funding. General Manager May might like to progress on that one.
Yeah. So this is being funded under the Works of Queensland program, under the art, as Councillor Potter said, as the art tourism trail. So that was for outdoor sculpture. So that's part of the Works of Queensland funding. But the community did for the funding of the peanut itself was raised by the community for the artists and that. So council's providing the platform, whereas the community has provided the big peanut.
And General Manager, how much is it that we're spending out of the Works for Queensland money on the entire project?
So that's approximately 80,000.
You happy with that, Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Thank you. Great to see the community working alongside council and the Queensland government to create these great opportunities. And of course, the big peanut's getting plenty of publicity across Queensland, getting phone calls from radio stations in North Queensland about it. Can I also just ask, the colour scheme that we saw there with the reddy browny colours on the pathways, is that the sort of approximately that one there? Is that the sort of colour scheme we're going to end up with? That's going to be the look? Is that correct? Because I think that looks great. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Those colours, they look different on screen compared to the bigger screen, but they do have that earthy colour scheme attached to it as close as possible on the day when the paint goes down. You know, there's always a variation, but that's effectively trying to represent those correct colours. Yep.
I think that's a wonderful choice in terms of representing the landscape that we have in our region. I think it's really on the mark in terms of the colours that suit our region, similar to our logo. Can I also ask, is the barbecue going to be replaced? Will we still have a barbecue? Because I know people do like tourists to come sometimes. Is the barbecue utilised? I'm not sure.
I'm going to have to say no on that one at this point in time. It's my understanding because, but I may have to clarify that for you, Mr. Mayor, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, look, that's fine. I'm not sure about the utilisation rates on the barbecue, but whether that could be just perhaps considered.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that. There is another barbecue further over in the park, so there is another barbecue not far from this one.
That answers my question. That's fine. Thank you. There's still a barbecue there. Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's fabulous. So I was just going to ask, I just note the changes in the structures and things in the area, which looks really nice. I just wanted to ask, just across the path there near on the edge of the Bill Hull Car Centre, there's a heap of those old, do they call them cobble logs, sort of seats and tables and things? And I'm just wondering, is it possible to get some sort of information about those? Do they actually meet current standards? And, you know, what would be the process in terms of moving forward to perhaps remove them? You know, are they needed there anymore? I just think I'm mindful of all this beautiful work that's happening here, and just it looks really higgledy-piggledy at the moment on the edge of town, having all these different kind of style shelters and seating. So that's probably my question around those tables and chairs. I think they're well and truly past their end of life, and I understand we may not have the funding or the need to replace them, but I do think they have to go, and it just would look a lot better without them. So I was just keen to hear from the staff around that process, or what you may need from council to investigate that and come back. Do we need to move a motion for a report, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We can notice with the picture that we've got there, that's the idea is that we actually replace all the shelters there, so it is consistent. But you are right, the ones across the gully are the old style. So as far as meeting current standards, they are when they're put in, so they may not meet if we were trying to put them up now, but they are still classed as meeting current standard. So we can certainly look at, and this is part of looking through our whole the service level documents that we'll talk about in workshop, and we'll be looking at, say, removing some of these old shelters, and at that time you make the decision whether you replace them or don't replace them, and the style. And I would think here you would naturally continue as with that similar style, so you don't end up with that. And that was the idea. I think we talked about master planning, is that we make sure that we actually do follow a theme or an actual plan rather than whatever's available at the time.
Thanks, GM. I'm picking up on Councillor Schumacher's point here. I think the decision to be made is, do we retain some shade shelters there or don't we? If we do, clearly we're going to continue with this same theme so it blends with the rest of Lions Park. I'm keen to hear from council, do we think they should? I have seen people using those. People come around from Bill Hull, they stop there and have lunch there. For me personally, I'd like to think, if we're going to do this project, is there scope while we're doing this to put those same shelters across the gully and have the whole thing finished looking smick when it's done? If we're going to have people there putting these in, should we do them others at the same time? Being a little bit bold and putting that forward, it doesn't seem to be there's a lot of decisions to be made here other than do we want to do it or don't we?
Actually, probably just on that one is that given all of the Works of Queensland work that's going on there, like these shelters have been ordered and for delivery before June, I think, it could be the issue could be actually getting additional shelters at the same time. We could certainly investigate whether we can, but that could be just the only issue.
Just wanting to know from council, is it something you'd like to investigate? And if we can get the shelters and get them in before 30 June, would you like to see that done? I know we had $200,000 set aside for this arts project. We've only taken 80,000 at this stage from what I'm hearing. If there's some money there to do it, I'm up to council. Do we want to do it?
100%. 100%. While we're going there, make sure it's finished. Go in and it's been used around the table before. We do a job once, we do it right, and then we walk away. So fully supportive of doing it. Whether or not, as taken on what General Manager just said, we may have a little delay in work waiting for the tables or the shade structures, but certainly order them and replace them when they can get their hands on them. So fully supportive of that. I think it's common sense.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jones. Councillor Potter.
Look, I think that would be great. I think the other thing is, you were mentioning the barbecue before, so that's actually where the other barbecue is, if I'm correct. So that barbecue on this side of the park, Lions Park, where the big peanut is, will be going, and that's the other barbecue is on the other side of the park. So, I mean, I have to agree with you there. If we're going to do it, we may as well do it and do it right. So, and then that way that barbecue sort of blends in with the rest of the park then.
Mr. CEO, you did any head of power for that? Any instruction from council?
Mr. Mayor, can we keep plugging away with what we've got and then we can come back? Because I've got the barbecue as a question to come back anyway. I know the manager gave an answer of sorts, but I'd probably like to clarify. We've got the W4Q program, so we can take the intent, if you wanted to just request a further update for the next meeting, and we'll just march off and get things moving.
So,
If that's all right with you,
fellas, if there's an
General
appetite in
Manager.
council from the committee, can you go and see if we can order these things? And as we're saying, you're happy to do that?
Yeah, if that works for everyone, Mr. Mayor, I think we can just continue to progress it, and if everyone's under the understanding it'll come out of that arts money. The only one that we don't want to forget, and I know the General Manager's got it under control, is the clown. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Potter?
We don't need to amend the motion then?
No need to amend the motion. Officers will take it on board. As Councillor Jones said, do it once, do it well, officers. If you can get it done by 30 June, that'd be great. And thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for bringing that forward, because it could have been an oversight, but if we can make it happen, that'd be great. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Mr. Mayor,
Great
and we'll
suggestion.
just resolve in the minutes that the further action is, and so that'll come back for endorsement.
Good, thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, that being the case, now where are we? We've got that on the table. Let's put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll now move on to the new dam signage at 150. And Manager Watt, did you want to take us, lead us in on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that's a proposal for council's endorsement, simply prepared by our media art consultant or engagement of a contractor to prepare that as part of the Works for Queensland as well. So really it's improved signage for identifying those particular facilities, simply just putting it in front of council for any comment, endorsement, changes, feedback, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager. I'll hereby move that council will support the South Bay Tourist Park's branding design to be implemented at Lake Boondooma and with jockey bidders and dam signage and promotional material. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors, I'll speak to the motion. Manager, staff, I absolutely love the colour scheme. I love the design. I think in terms of water, the blue, the water, the design, the consistency between the branding, for me, I think it's a tremendous outcome. Well done. Absolutely love it. But happy to hear from other councillors to what your thoughts are. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I like the colours and the design. The only thing I just would like to see changed is to make it Boondooma Dam as opposed to Lake Boondooma, because I even in the next report it's about the Festival of the Dams. I think we promote the dams. It's known as Boondooma Dam. The road that goes into it is Boondooma Dam. When we go to the fishing comp, it's a Boondooma Dam fishing comp. I just think for consistency and that we should just change that to Boondooma Dam rather than Lake Boondooma.
Just a question on that. Is there other signage that has Lake Boondooma or Boondooma Dam? Are we going to have conflict with other signage?
I'm not aware of any other signage. I think that the road in is called Boondooma Dam Road. So to me, I've never been able to understand why we've called it Lake Boondooma. So I think this is an opportunity to get it changed. And also I did, the Bjelke-Petersen Dam has always been known as Yellowkeel Park on BP Dam. And I know that some of the Murgon people have been, really, wanting to push the Yellowkeel Park. But I did do a bit of consultation around this and they're all happy to go with the Bjelke-Petersen Dam and just more or less, understate the Yellowkeel Park, because this is about our promotion of our dams.
Right, thanks, Councillor Duff. Look, if council feels that Boondooma Dam is the more appropriate name from a marketing and historical point of view, if it's not going to conflict with any existing signage that's going to cost us money to have to replace, I'm happy to change that motion so it says Boondooma Dam rather than Lake Boondooma, and I guess as a result of that we could change the design, I'd imagine. So, look, happy to hear from the committee. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm hearing what Councillor Duff's saying, and certainly I echo her comments. These look beautiful, and there's definitely a need for improved tourist signage across the region. So thank you for bringing this to the table. Just in terms of Lake Boondooma, I'm probably just keen. I don't have an issue either way. I just would really like to confirm what is its actual name. So can we, I know it's our facility and we own it, but I'm probably a little bit nervous about deciding if Lake Boondooma's been put forward, is that its actual name?
Yeah, no, I think the history of Lake Boondooma Boondooma, I think, is really just, it's a name for a marketing purpose. So whether you want to market it as Lake Boondooma or Boondooma Dam, and I think then this was a previous Wondai Shire CEO when Wondai took over the park out there, and I think it was probably to give it a bit more of a glamour, I suppose, feel rather than a dam. Sort of a lot of the farm dams you see out there, you wouldn't want in the rural area, you wouldn't want to swim in. So whether a lake is more enticing. So I think it was just really it's a marketing name, is why it was set up. It is a dam, same as BP. There are dam walls on things. So as far as essentially it's been marketed as Lake Boondooma by the Wondai Shire and continue on South Burnett. If we want to change to Boondooma Dam, it's really just a marketing strategy. You'll notice that the website for this one is Lake Boondooma, and same with Yallacool, but probably Yallacool we're making the conscious choice because, we all call it BP Dam or Bjelke-Petersen Dam, so we're probably making the choice there that we do see that we should be marketing it as Bjelke-Petersen or BP Dam rather than, because Yallacool is essentially the caravan park that sits on the dam. Consistency probably is key if we do make that one Boondooma Dam. You'll also notice that we are trying to, on these signs, we've got South Burnett tourist parks. So the idea is to try actually market them as a package. We've got two tourist parks in the region. So with our web page, the links will just take you to one site, and you'll have the choice to go into BP or Boondooma. So that's part of you'll see, the South Burnett Tourist Park strategy. The other element to this that we market them as similar. So, if council feels that you can certainly change marketing strategy, and it'll just matter over time that you'll see things with Lake Boondooma on it. They can be updated and changed.
My apologies for speaking while you were General Manager. I made my sincere apologies. I was just asking Lynelle if she could, what I'm hearing around the room, and I've conferred with our CEO, that would give rise to perhaps just a little tweak to the motion to say that we change it to Boondooma Dam and the name on the design be changed, on this design be changed to Boondooma Dam. So I'll put that forward as a motion. Councillor Schumacher, are you happy to continue to support the seconding of that? Thank you. Does any councillor will speak for or against that? Thank you, Councillor Henson.
Yeah, I'm neither for nor against just in this conversation, but what I'm about to say, but we'd want to take on board as well, at the dam lake wall, there's plaques there. I think you'll see it's constructed and everything on those plaques is stated as a lake. I was there only just last weekend, and they have all the capacities and how it was built there on a massive plaque on the viewing platform on the dam wall, on the lake wall, sorry. So we just want to, before we do anything like that, be aware of what is portrayed on all that when it was designed and when it was built, because there is some very interesting reading and literature on that viewing platform. So could I just suggest that we look into that a little further? I know, and I've just been quickly trying to look the difference between lake and dam. Dam is defined as being a structure, and more so the wall, whereas lake being the actual area and what surrounds it. So I think there's a little bit more work needs to be done there before we come to that decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. If I can, to satisfy my sense of humour, this is the first toe in the water. Boom, boom. This is I draw Pete's explanation before. The South Burnett tourist parks, where as the ongoing commercialisation of these facilities, I suppose, as whilst they do have a community benefit and a whole range of things, but we've spoken over the last, for the first year of this term, about turning these things into fully functional commercial activities. They all have various names: Bjelke-Petersen Dam, Yallacool Park, and it's actually Lake Baramba. So sits inside BP Dam. So, and you're exactly right, Councillor Henson, is that you've got Lake Boondooma, we've got Boondooma Dam, and Wondai back in the day, they obviously went with the caravan park to reflect the lake, as well as for the reasons that General Manager explained. There will be some names again that we can't change. I mean, I don't think we could just roll out and wipe out Lake Baramba whether you wanted to or not. It exists. Lake Binduma exists. Whether we want to change the name, but Councillor Duff's point is well made for consistency for the signs, and this is where we're going and why bringing it up, is it's the two dams, and then we've got the facilities in the dams, and then slowly but surely now starting to rebrand the tourist parks is what they are, and with the water park concept and a whole raft of expansion for these parks going forward, there'll be components in them. So the signage is, and would acknowledge all the staff that have worked over a period of time. The fishing ambassador, council's fishing ambassadors have come back. They've given it a wholehearted sign of approval, which sometimes is tricky. There's a range of people, so it's a small step in starting to rebrand and get the naming of these things consistent. So a lot more work to be done in agreeing with you, but each of the sites carries several names internally, and it just comes to how we want to market our commercial facilities within that. So this is that first stage of marketing or changing the branding on those facilities.
Thanks very much, Mr CEO. So I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 1.7, Festival of the Dam sponsorship at 153, Mr CEO.
It's literally an information report. We've plugged this in, it's in third year now. Last year got a bit mucky with COVID, so it was pushed to the end of the year, and we did sneak in a sort of a quasi one as well at BP Dam. No, council's noting we get the entry fees back, and if we get the competitions limited to 40 teams. So given the entry fees back, there's a likelihood of about 7,000 to 9,000 of revenue to come back in through the fees alone. So it'll be pretty much cost neutral, well, close to anyway, as we can make it. The period is generally a quiet time, and it's just one of the reasons, and to preempt a question, why have we left it a little bit later, putting the information out this year and not brought it earlier? COVID is changing the way that a lot of people book holidays and think about things, because you can have a trip cancelled at a spur of notice. So people are leaving a lot of the bookings now until they sort of get much more comfortable that it's going to go ahead. So we've aligned that sort of this year with dropping it out into the market, and particularly with the recent shutdown in Brisbane for the 3 days, it was very much a reminder that things can go astray very quickly through no fault of anyone. So yeah, so it's on in the third week. All councillors are more than welcome, and with the presentations, again, the Mayor last year, from recollection, gave a very wholehearted commitment to it on the Sunday. And certainly councillors are invited out not only for the weekend, but to participate in the presentations as well, please.
Thank you, Mr CEO. And in light of that wholehearted commitment, I'd hereby move that council note the sponsorship of up to $10,000 for a 2021 Festival of the Dams, Boondooma Open, to be hosted on the third weekend in May 2021. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is 9.8, short-term use of 195 Kingura Street, Kingura, 154. Due to a declarable conflict of interest, I'm now choosing to leave the room and will stay away until recalled. Thank you.
Okay, so as the Mayor's left the room, 9.8, short-term use of 195 Kingura Street. Offer for lease by way of tender the shop located at 195 Kingura Street, Kingura, Lot 1 on RP 13329. The summary: Council recently purchased the shop located at 195 Kingura Street, Kingura. Kingura Rotary Club recently undertook a short-term occupancy of the shop as an operational base to coordinate hosting the District Rotary Conference at the end of March 2021. Now the shop has become vacant. Council may offer the building for lease by way of tender. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommends to Council that Council offer 195 Kingura Street, Kingura, Lot 1 on RP 13329 for lease by way of tender. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconder. Councillor Shoemaker. Anybody want to speak for or against or make comments on that? Councillor Shoemaker.
Probably just more of a question. I'm not sure I support this, only because, and I'm probably seeking a little bit more information, just with the transformation project and our plans for Kingura Street, I do see that shop as an opportunity to support traffic, foot traffic in and out and around Kingura Street. So I'm probably just more interested in what conversations have been had with the KTP team, and if there is a need for that store to be opened up as potentially an access way from the Glendon Street car park into the main street. I'm just probably keen maybe not to make a decision on this until we fully understand whether there is any need for that. I'm also really mindful that the Kingura Transformation team are currently leasing a building in the main street. Is there any opportunity? What's our arrangements with that lease? I guess just keen to understand what are the cost-effective ways for council to maximise this space, being that the KTP will cause disruption to the town.
Certainly, we've checked with the KTP team to see if they wanted to relocate, if that was a good idea to relocate to that building. They are in a lease arrangement through until the end of September this year, and they have, I suppose, put some costs in place to get themselves established in that building. So they didn't really want to wear additional costs and relocate at this point. And as I said, we're in a lease until September. So we really need to probably see that lease through. And that's why we're probably suggesting a short-term sort of lease arrangement, maybe like a 12-month to a 2-year period for this particular shop until we determine what needs to happen with KTP going forward.
I was probably just to add on that. So with the KTP, there's been absolutely no design work or any work around this building, whether it can or can't or be utilised. So that's definitely out of scope of the KTP project. So that's probably why we're bringing this forward is in the interim, rather than have a vacant building, then in the next, say, 12 months to 2 years, that there is a tenant or a return in there, rather than, because there's been no scoping or design or anything done for the use in KTV.
Just with that information, I'm wondering if the process in terms of by tender, would that include some sort of expression of interest or more information to come back to council around what opportunities come forward? Like, I'm probably just keen to understand more about if we agree to this today, that we offer it for lease by way of tender. I know council decides the tender, so I guess that information will come back to us at that point in time. Yeah, I'm probably just interested in the process, being that there is more work to be done around that building into the future.
Yes, certainly we could. So with the tender process, and we do have to go through the tender process, given that it is a lease is still seen as a disposal of land from a council point of view. So we do have to follow the requirements under the Local Government Act. So that's why we've got to go out for tender. And as you said, that will come back through council. Council can look at what the proposals are, and you may weight a different proposal at a higher, because you've got to look at the whole benefits to the community. So it may not be just a financial benefit if there's a use there that the council considers is greater. So yeah, you do get to assess that tender and see what you think is the best use for the building.
Councillor Potter, go to you and then straight across to Councillor Duff.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, I would just like to question with regards to what's happening with the shed at the back of that building, because it is a bit of an eyesore and the shed itself doesn't look very good. Whether we had plans to get rid of that particular shed at the back as well, thanks.
No, not at this stage. It is locked and secure. and no one is utilising the shed, but there is no plans to remove the shed at this stage.
Councillor Duff.
Yeah, just a question and also a statement. I'm just interested in what it's costing to lease the building that they are currently leasing for the KTP. When you said that there's already been investment in, infrastructure, surely that's just stuff that could be transported across into another shop. And to me, it almost seems wasteful to have paying rent in one and then leasing out another one when we could just shift the KTP project across to that building for the duration. Just wondering at what cost is that rental agreement?
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, we probably just need to bring back, but the cost, some of the costs with establishment, like getting the amenities, toilet facilities and that up and going. So I think it's more about that if you've had sunk costs into that building. But yeah, we can certainly, if you want to have further discussions around that, if you want to leave this one. But it was just more of a matter of trying to get it discussed so it's not sitting there vacant. But we can reopen those discussions and find the cost.
Councillor Potter, I have one last quick question.
No, I was just wondering, do we need to move a procedural motion to bring this back?
Yeah, so will that correct? So can Councillor Potter move that, or do I have to? Councillor Potter, you can move that motion if you want a procedural motion to leave it on the table and bring it back for further discussion at the next. So,
yes,
Councillor Duff will second that.
Yep. Yes, thank you.
No discussion. That's right. So, all in favour to leave it on the table until next month? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Someone grab the mayor and he can come back in and finish the meeting off. Thank you.
Okay, 9.9, licence agreement between Council and Department of Education for Preston and Blackbutt swimming pools at 157. General Manager Peterson, thank you.
As outlined in the report, Council leases the two facilities from the Department of Education, that's both Preston and Blackbutt swimming pools. Our agreement has come to an end at the completion of April, so if Council would like to continue to operate or have access to the Preston and Blackbutt swimming pools for the community to utilise after school hours, then we would need to re-enter into an agreement with the Department of Education. I have outlined in the report what sort of costs are involved to employ pool managers to manage both of those facilities during that period of time. We have recently just gone out for a pool manager replacement out of Preston, and unfortunately we haven't received any inquiries or interest in someone managing that facility. So it is getting difficult to find people that want to manage pools, and certainly I can see going forward that some of the costs associated with hiring a manager is going to increase in some of these smaller areas, because as you can imagine, you need to be on call every day for the pool, and you need to therefore live fairly close to that site to be able to manage the pool. The other issue with being a pool manager at Preston and Blackbutt is that you only get to access the pool for 7 months of the year. Outside of that, the pool is too cold and the community doesn't necessarily want to utilise the pool. So for an income purpose for the community, for the pool manager, it's only about 7 months of the year that they actually get to obtain some sort of income or activity at the pool. So if council is interested in progressing and continuing to manage or have access to the pools for the community at both Preston and Blackbutt, we would negotiate a new licence agreement with the Department of Education.
Thank you, Manager. Councillor Schumacher.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor, I was just thinking I probably didn't fully understand this report. I might step out for this one if that's okay, and just declare that my sister-in-law actually is a swimming instructor and works at the Blackbutt pool. So if that's okay, I'd rather just leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. We'll note that the Councillor Schumacher has provided a declarable conflict of interest statement and has left the meeting and will stay away until this matter is finalised. Now, Councillor Duff, you had your light on. We'll have a general discussion on this and then we'll go to the motion. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very, very keen to support this. I think the benefits are for these small communities is that council doesn't have to fund the capital upgrades for the pools. We have the this agreement. It's worked very well in the past. It's in many ways, some of these small communities like Preston, that's one of the only, there's not many things for young people to do, and I know even the older people are using the Preston pool for you know, their exercises and all sorts of things. I think that, and Blackbutt the same. Just really keen to make sure that we progress this recommendation.
Councillor Duff, are you proposing that you'll move the motion as it's presented? Thank
Yes,
you. We have a
thank you.
mover. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I actually agree with this. My only concern is that if we put this out for tender and we haven't had a person apply, what happens in a situation where we've got a lease on the pool when we don't have anyone to actually run it? That's my probably biggest concern.
The pool does not open until we find a leasee.
Right, thank you. You happy with that, Councillor Potter? Yeah, thank you. Okay, Councillor Henson.
That leads to the question, that being the case, council's has a facility, and I can agree with Councillor Duff. Would there not be an onus if the council didn't agree to lease these facilities, that the Department of Education takes them on and runs them themselves? That question, I just asked the question.
Unfortunately, the Department of Education are not interested in running these facilities for the wider community. Certainly they're committed to running the pool and investing in the pool, like major capital improvements for the last couple of years in both Blackbutt and Preston. And it's really about the Department of Education providing the pools for the students of each of those schools. But in terms of providing the pool for the public to access on weekends and after hours, it's probably not part of their core business, so they're not interested in funding that. We certainly have had extensive conversations with the Department of Education probably about 3 years ago to really see if we could change our model and how we do it, and really it came down to this, that we really need to go back and enter into a lease agreement to allow these facilities to be open after hours for the community to be able to utilise them.
Thanks, Manager. I'd like to very much support this motion as well as one of the councillors, that the provision of recreational and educational facilities such as swimming pools in our smaller communities are absolutely critical, and I always support keeping pools and libraries open in those communities, because we don't have much else out in the bush to offer people in terms of those sorts of things, and swimming pools are always at the heart of the community, and often, they're always very important to the community during those warmer periods. Okay, that being the case now, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Can we invite Councillor Schumacher back? Thank you. Right, Committee 910, licence to occupy the Kingura Junior Cricket Association Incorporated at 158, and the recommendation is as presented, that the committee recommend to council enter into a licence to occupy with the Kingura Junior Cricket Association Incorporated for Part A of Lot 89 RP 6668 with conditions as stated there from A to F. Do we have a mover? Thank you, councillor Potter. A second, and thank you, councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Questions? Councillor Potter, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With regards to this one, I actually would have liked to have known a little bit more about this prior to this particular meeting, but if you saw in my report, they've actually put money towards the cricket nets in this particular park. So this is just, I suppose, a flow-on effect to that one, and I think later on they'd like to do some fencing around the area, which means they can actually do more graded cricket matches, and then I think this will save us money in the long run because then they look after this parks area. Am I right, General Manager May and Acting Manager Watt?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they're looking at actually probably establishing a presence there and fencing that the cricket part of it. So that would be fenced out of the park area or on three sides anyway. So again, they don't have to fetch the ball from the front yards of the adjoining houses or whatever. There will be a fence around it. It will be still available to the general public. So it's not put a gate in there, but you'll still be able to access the area. But we currently have an agreement with them to hold the cricket games there, so it's really just formalising that agreement, and yeah, I think they're committing to look after that area.
Thanks, General Manager. General Manager, with the lease arrangement manager, does that still allow council to have say in terms of that new infrastructure? So, for example, if they want to go in there and put in a vegetation barrier, a hedge or something that we're going to have to then maintain, we've got enough hedges to trim around the place. Is that going to be problematic for us? Can we actually have some say over what they can and can't do in terms of that new boundary infrastructure?
Yes, that certainly can be written into the licence agreements. Those sorts of things, they have to get consent from council before they're allowed to improve further infrastructure or plant gardens or make any modifications.
Yeah, thank you. I wouldn't be keen to see a lease agreement that gives them licence to go and plant new vegetation or something that we've then got to maintain. So in terms of our annual maintenance costs for our Parks and Gardens department. Okay, but sounds as though you've got that covered. All right then. So those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item is 911, proposed tender for the sale of land, lot 101. On SP 257227, lot 101 on SP 272806. Manager, can you give us a quick overview? Thank you.
So these two parcels of land, council acquired the two vacant parcels as a result of the sale of the land for rate arrears in the auction process in 2020. So we're keen to have these parcels of land placed on the open market for sale through a tender process. But based on the conversation that was had here earlier this morning, we will just have a quick conversation ourselves. This is probably two ideal lots that could be identified and progress through that pilot project, if you would consider that as an option.
Thank you, Manager. And now, Manager, where is Kelvin Street and 27B Kingura Street? They're both residential allotments, correct? Yep, and they're fairly close to town. So Kelvin Street?
Down opposite Tabinga School, Kelvin Street, I think is a map, is the back of Tabinga, and then there's the other one is a small one just next to.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks, GM. Councillor Potter?
Kelvin Street actually runs parallel to River Road and it's just over, so past the Ergon Energy block of land. You've got the gully and then you've got the street to the right there.
My understanding these have been offered for sale by auction previously as part of our sale of rates in arrears land. We now have scope within the regulations, having done that now, to offer them on the open market. And that's in accordance with the local government regulations. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones?
Yes, taken on, through you, Mr Mayor, taken on the point that our manager has just highlighted there after the discussions that we've had and a motion that's been moved. I would like to think that these two blocks of land may be not put on the market just yet. I think just looking at the location and the location close to Tabinga State School, I think are ideal locations for exactly what we're proposing. So I would like to I don't know whether it's appropriate now or whatever, but make a change to the recommendation that we take them off or do not offer them on the open market until we discover what we are going to do with our previous discussion earlier here today.
Councillor, if I could just suggest, if that was council's feeling, we'd just note the report for information, because you don't want a negative resolution that you don't do something. So the other thing is, General Manager, there is now Kelvin is where the discussion is about another development down there, residential. That's the larger development going on down there that may be associated to independent living. Is that Kelvin? So anyway, yeah, there's probably some other conflicting development not conflicting, actually bad language, my apologies. There may be some other interests down there that council may want to give consideration to before it just pops them up as a residential block. So yeah, if that was council's feel, that would be a question then of just noting the report today with further information to come back.
Yeah, look, sorry, Councillor Jones, I'm going to interject here. I strongly speak against what you're suggesting. I think it needs to, let's get them up, let's get them sold. We've got a major processor in town who can't get staff here because he can't get accommodation. We've got builders screaming out for land. I don't think it's good business to wait a couple of months. They're there, they're subdivided, they're zoned, they're ready to roll. We could sell them, we could get the bobcats and the machines on there and get the houses up and get people accommodated. I think we should not muck around. We should get on and get it done. That's my view. I'd like to see that the motion stays as it is, quite frankly.
No, happy to cop that. And if they don't sell, well, by the time we get around to having discussions, whatever else, yeah, by all means. But keep that in mind. Yeah, so put them on the open market by all means. Happy with the recommendation, and if they're still on the market and haven't been sold, well, we can utilise them then.
Yeah, take your point, certainly, Councillor Jones, but I think we've time is of the essence here, as Councillor Shoemaker has pointed out. So I'll certainly happy to move that committee recommend to council as presented there that they go on the open market. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers for or against? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, committee. Okay, I'm now going to go to question on notice 10.1, 179, which is the Mr. CEO in relation to the old shelters from Parks Renewals from Councillor Potter. Can we refer that to you, Mr. CEO, to provide the response? Thank you.
Either myself or the General Manager, because I think suspect it's his work, is the question and response is there, so probably happy to take questions, or is it enough information what you're chasing?
There's enough information here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Thank you, General Manager and CEO. That being the case, we'll. I don't think there's a recommendation here that the responses be received and noted. I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you to the staff and council for raising that. That being the case, we've attended all the items on the agenda, and we now call the meeting closed at 12:56 p.m. Thank you all.